Dylan and Joe, Basement Podcast, brought to you today by Dylan and Joe. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Dylan and Joe Basement Podcast. We're your hosts, Dylan.
The first ever, and Joe.
And Joe.
The inaugural run.
Inaugural run.
Over the bow.
Yep,
we could sail.
Ready to sail. We could fuck this up royally, but we're going to give it a shot because this is what we're going to do.
It's going to be fun.
It's going to be fun, all right, guys? Jesus was an alien.
Yes, we thought long and hard about our first topic.
Long and hard about our first topic. We've got a list of a couple things. And
Jesus was an alien.
Jesus was an alien.
Now, this is a topic that Dylan brought up, and I couldn't agree more to talk about. It seems super interesting. Obviously, people have all different kinds of ideas about the history of humanity, and it gets real cloudy the farther you go back. People didn't used to be able to record themselves on camera and have headphones thousands of years ago, so it gets really sketchy on what actually was going on, but there's a hell of a lot of stories about it. So Dylan, tell me what you know about that concept, because I've never heard that exact concept before, but that's obviously a fascinating idea. People love Jesus.
So people love Jesus. More people in the world love Jesus than don't love Jesus.
That's true.
To support what you're saying, specifically what we've learned over the past 20 years is, and especially over the past 4 years with fake news, this type of thing, we're only getting to see what was recorded in history. And up until, so regarding aliens and stuff like that, we have very little knowledge of recorded history that has to do with extraterrestrial encounters up until 1946, which is when Roswell happened.
Yeah, that's people would consider the beginning of like UFO culture, ufology, when people started studying the idea that there's men from outer space coming down to our planet. Because you can actually take photographs and there's video footage of different things that people are thinking are UFOs.
Yeah, exactly. And there's more evidence than not that that Roswell was a cover-up. So right off the bat, the media has a really big part in UFOs. And before that, we had like kind of like research institutions like the ATLA that bring things back to like the 1400s. And then before that, we have just what was recorded by the church, which the ATLA is actually part of the church too. And was Jesus an alien? So we're speculating on this, and we're just going to put the pieces together about what we think. So this all kind of came to wind based off of a lot of different things that pull up to bring us to this conversation today. But according to an article published in 2019, noted ufologist Dr. Barry Downing, who is also a Presbyterian minister, he's really the one who first came out and said that aliens have come to Earth.
Let me tell you, Presbyterian, that's if you're not sure if you so you like both kinds of churches because you're a Presbyterian. You're not really sure if you love one church or the other. Is that what that is?
That's a great question. I have no idea. I just know that when you drive by churches, like Church of Latter-day Saints, other things that not all of us go, that we're unfamiliar with. It doesn't it kind of fit into that category? Maybe they're more open thinking. or something.
Yeah, I was just doing a dumb joke about them being bitarian.
Oh,
I was scared to pronounce Presbyterianism, but
yep.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's part of the Protestant Reformation, right? It's one of the Protestant religions that's like
Yeah, I have
they
no.
believe in Jesus, obviously, because this guy is going to posit this idea right now. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh no, it's all
Very
right. No,
down.
that's good because I'm just basically going off for some facts that I researched earlier
Sure,
about
yeah.
this guy in
Very
Presbyterianism,
down.
and
And
that's
this is
just
2019.
what 2019.
This is
Yeah,
2019. Gotcha.
yeah, and given Presbyterian, it just adds a little fact that not saying he's not a lunatic because no one knows, but he also has some. If he has his PhD in something like that, he is a deep thinker and has critical thinking skills and has gone through
Sure, yeah.
the realm of things.
Mhm.
So, anyways, his theory is he's one of the many people who believe that aliens have come to Earth and influenced our history and religions for a long time.
Yes.
And what he kind of talked about, which again we can all understand this, is when you go through the Bible, anybody who know the story of Jesus Christ, born in 1 AD.
I think famously he was born in 0, and then when
Was
he
he born
turned
in
1 year
0?
old, I think he
Okay,
was born in
I'll go
0, right? 'Cause
0.
before Christ or after.
Yep,
So
exactly.
how they say common era because they don't want to make it about Jesus, but it still is.
Yeah.
That's why they put the number.
Yeah, makes sense.
1 year 0, from what we can tell.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So this guy mentioned, things that we've all read about, turning water into wine, some of his superpowers about healing people.
Yeah.
The definition of heaven to begin with is technically a different dimension. I mean, there's really no other way to describe that.
Definitely not here.
Definitely not here. And especially because they're so literal in the Bible. There's the Old Testament, which is more or less what we're talking about compared to the New Testament, where they're not when Old Testament pre-Jesus, New Testament post-Jesus.
Yeah.
But
And it's not directly correlated, but people have throughout time immemorial have called the sky the heavens. Even when people talk about studying, astrological ideas, they start to think about, it's the heavens, the idea of outer space. They call it the heavens, even though it's not the same heaven as they probably mean in the Bible. But that's the idea of it. It's somewhere else. It's somewhere we are not from and we can't get to right now easily.
Yep. Okay. Exactly. No, that's exactly it. And speaking of the heavens, there was a John chapter 8 verse 23 where it said, and he was saying to them, "You are from below, I am from above. You are from this world, I am not of this world."
Mm-hmm.
That's what was in the Bible. So when you go back to those days, Joe, we've had this conversation before where there was a lot of survival going on back then. Even when you're in Babylon, you're in Jerusalem and these type of things, the societies back then were focused on building a civilization, but on top of that, just not going crazy, not building Egyptian pyramids that take 40 plus years to build without a bigger meaning or a bigger purpose. And I believe that.
Yeah, most people were focused on staying alive up until very recently. It's definitely a modern luxury we have that we can even do things like pursue ideas outside of our immediate work. It was mostly wake up, don't starve, don't get sick, and then have a roof over your head so you don't die. And hopefully you can have a couple of kids in the meantime, but not necessarily. Most people did have kids because it helped around the house and around the farm. But back in the time when the Bible verses were being written, or at least when they were claimed to have been written from, people were not mostly concerned with making superstructures. They were more concerned about living their day-to-day lives. And only people with immense power had the ability to actually will people to do things like that, whether it is building giant structures or, different scientific ideas that you wouldn't be able to do back then because they had a surplus of money and resources to be able to do that. The average person can find out a lot more about the world in 5 minutes today than people usually went through their whole lives learning about. People were not about coming up with new ideas. When you don't have any food for tomorrow, you're not really concerned about learning new things. You're more concerned about surviving. So a lot of people from that time weren't really looking into these things.
Exactly. Or to kind of add value to what you're saying is they also didn't want to add resources, time, and money into a big giant piece of art. I mean, we're kind of driving off the Jesus topic, but it all ties in together. If you got to put food on the plates and reproduce and all these other things.
No time for art.
Yeah, right. Like big, giant, expensive art, like pyramids and stuff like that. It's kind of what I think is
Yeah.
totally wild. So with
Absolutely.
Jesus,
So get me down to what Barry Downey said, because this is the thesis of what we're talking about here, that
yeah,
Jesus, an alien, because we're going to get into the idea of cosmic astronauts coming down to the
hmm
planet, because that's
yep,
initially the idea that Jesus is one of those, right? But let's
yeah,
get down,
yeah,
let's nail down why Jesus is one of them first, then we can kind of pull back and talk about the idea of ancient astronauts and things like that. So why is it Jesus in particular that he thinks is it? Just because of the miracles and the idea of heaven? Because that seems like a pretty shaky bridge to be put on. Because a lot of what
exactly.
Jesus
So
said wasn't meant to be taken literally, right? He has parables and stories that he says, I'm a fisher of men, I'm the Lamb of God. He's not saying that he is an actual lamb or that he is fishing men out of the
that's a
river. He's
great,
saying
great
that
point.
these are
Yeah,
ideas that I'm coming from where you're not from, and heaven is a place that you can't get to. This could be him talking about many things, but it's not talking about the literal idea that he's going to be fishing men or being a lamb. He's a man, or maybe he's an alien. What does
right.
Barry Downey think about that? Is it just because of
Lamb,
those things that he thinks?
lamb fishing man, alien. Um,
Yeah.
what does he think of that? So it seems pretty clear. So the source is kind of sketchy on what he's pulling up. Again,
Yeah.
as somebody who's, I'll get into my actual theory on this, but we're going to go over just some facts first, or about what somebody else said.
Yeah.
It seems very, very much like he's a victim of confirmation bias when he pulls up what he's reading in the scriptures. So specifically, like every little piece, if you read the entire New Testament, for example, which would be about Jesus' life, he's pulling
Yeah.
every single little thing that he sees in there and saying, that's definitely aliens. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
that too? Yeah. Oh, clearly that's aliens. Great example is there was a star in the night sky in right around Christmas that
Right. Yeah.
brought the
The legendary the star in the sky that the wise men and the shepherds were said to have followed to find music.
Yep,
Right.
yep, yep. Two boys who got yelled at in Catholic school here for our first like
That's why
13.
I know most of this stuff. It's from going to church for so long. I haven't.
No, we didn't think this would totally get down into. Well, I was thinking initially like, oh, Jesus is an alien. Let's talk about something kind of funny and sort of interesting that we don't know is true or not. And all of a sudden, we're talking about the Bible the entire time. Um, but anyways, that's a great example. Is that like that star in the sky was a UFO that led those guys there? But also, why were they bringing gold, frankincense, and myrrh to Jesus when he was born? That's something else that this guy hinted at as well.
What is his idea of why that would have happened?
Well, gold is highly conductive back then, and why would you give a baby frankincense and myrrh? Do you know much about frankincense and myrrh? Because I know it smells good.
Yes, yeah. So what I know about gold, frankincense, and myrrh is that it's more of an offering. It's something you would bring a king. And what I know about that story from
Yeah.
basis at the time is that it's more of an idea that when a new king would be crowned in Judea or Palestine or any of those old kingdoms that we now know as different countries now, but back then they didn't have the same maps we had to draw. It was mostly small areas that were kingdoms. Herod was the king at the time around Nazareth and Jerusalem, so he would have been the same thing that happened to him. He would have been born, he would have been coronated, and people would come from all over and offer him gifts to say that they are appreciative and they're the subjects of the king. So the idea that I understand from the story is that they brought him gold, frankincense, and myrrh because it was the offerings you would give a king. That's the idea of it. Not that a baby has any use for it, not that a king has any use for it in particular. It's just the idea that they're bringing highly valuable items. And in the story, the three wise men, what we call them in the Bible, are also three kings. It's the idea that their kings are coming from all over to give this baby gifts that you'd give a king. So even kings are going to give this guy gifts, which means that he must be a king of kings, which in the Bible comes up multiple times that Jesus is called the King of Kings, that he is, the kingdom of heaven on earth. That's what my understanding of why they delivered those gifts. Less about the functionality about the gifts and more about the symbolism that you'd be willing to give up these precious things to a baby is a sign of respect and reverence rather than the functionality of it. Giving it to a woman and a carpenter and a baby in a manger. Not very functional.
Right, exactly. And people forget, because this is a point too, that you're like, well, why would three older dudes walk all this distance to go give a bunch of gifts to a baby? And there's one word. Catholicism, I think, is as you saw in the 50s and 60s anytime you've been to church, as somebody who's gone to church,
Mhm.
there's a driving factor in Catholicism, and it's strictly suffering.
Yeah.
They value, well, it's funny, but there's a
It's
lot of, they
valuable. Yeah.
value suffering. That is a main motivator and a main driving force. And
Yeah.
it's not suffering of other people. It is too. We've seen that in the world. But overall, suffering within yourself. I'm going to go do
There
X,
is
Y,
that
and Z
idea that
things that are really
suffering
hard
brings
for
you
me because it's going to
closer
get
to
me
God.
credit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So that kind of, that definitely.
But so now I'm gonna let you finish what Downey thinks, just because I want to start going back and forth here, because I'm already trying to pick holes in what he's saying. I don't want to be picking holes immediately because I'm gonna try to tank the conversation right away. But so those are basically his ideas, right? Things like that. Like you can nitpick pieces of it and say there is evidence here that shows that this may be the idea that Jesus was actually an alien. You brought up the idea of confirmation bias that I do want to bring up at some point later, because I
Yeah,
think that has a lot to do with this theory.
absolutely.
But so his ideas for the most part are things like that, right? You can find different instances in the Bible that on their own are compelling ideas about why this could happen. I mean, that alone, if you take it as as gospel, I don't mean to be doing a double entendre there.
Yeah, no, it's a good
You
one.
take it at face value, I should say, is that if there was actually a light in the sky leading them to an area, I mean, we're living in a time where people were navigating by looking at stars. That's how people traveled. So if there was a star that didn't usually exist in the sky and it was super bright and it brought them somewhere they're not, I think there's more evidence for that being a UFO than being some sort of magic or maybe a vision that they had. I can definitely see where he's going with things like that. So that's mostly what he's going for there, though, right? Is that I can find different instances in the Bible of why Jesus was an alien. Does he have any things in Jesus' later life, or is mostly things that he said he could heal people, his miracles might be technologically based? Because Jesus, unlike Pharaoh, wasn't really a big, powerful man at the time. He's mostly powerful through his ideas rather than his technology.
Right. Exactly. So regarding the end of his life, one of the excerpts that I pulled from him was that basically he believes that the same force that brought him to this planet is the same force that took him away. And we know the story about his birth that we just covered, and the story of his death is that he was, crucified for 3 days and then put into a cave, much like the one I'm in. Maybe he was the same one. We're not, sources haven't confirmed yet.
We haven't confirmed or denied that. It's hard to say.
The cave I'm in is not the same thing. There's a big rock over there. Get it? So
you could say.
That's the end of his life theory. But something else that I want to, it'd be good to get your perspective on as more or less the devil's advocate, but also something that I think has a hard time proving what it actually is. And I haven't seen any theories disproving this, just because I think no one's really given it too much time. In the Bible, in other scriptures, and from different religions, there's plenty of UFOs in pictures. And as kids, you just see them as that's a star in the sky, or not it's like a special star with a guy in it type of thing.
A star with a guy, not a star in the sky. Interesting.
A star with a guy. Yep. So one of them specifically, I don't have the exact one, but there's a sighting in the book of Ezekiel, which refers to a wheel within a wheel that could move in 4 directions without turning.
This is the idea.
The rim of the wheels were full of eyes.
Yeah, this is an idea of an angel, right? It's one of the angels that they said. It's not a seraphim or a cherubim. It's one of the angels they described that. Yeah, it's 2 wheels, a wheel within a wheel covered with eyes, which is, I mean, like nothing else. I mean, the idea people draw angels now is basically humans with wings on their backs or some kind of divine force. The idea of those 2 wheels, I think, is pretty compelling compared to a lot of things in the Bible. That seems otherworldly, to say the least.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with you on that. And I don't have any great theory on that besides that these were done by artists, and maybe it's a lot easier to draw in things like that as opposed to actually have physical evidence of people going through a lot of resources to put something together for very little reason. Again, like why did the Magi who visited Jesus on his birthday, at his birth, why did they care?
It was his birthday. You say that. It was his birthday.
It's true. That was his birthday, man. He got a new kid coming in. It's his birthday.
It's the day of your birth.
Yeah. Carpenter, poor person, birthday kid, whatever it is.
But the picture of the wheel within a wheel, though, those eyes, that is in the Bible. That's in Ezekiel. So any artist depicted that, they didn't make that up themselves. That was them going off of the source material of the Bible. Yeah, so even a fantastic image. it wasn't just them taking artistic liberties. I think it was basically them trying to recreate what that would look like if you had to draw it.
Right.
Because it's in there, those exact words are in there. A wheel within a wheel, covered with eyes.
Yeah.
It's not. They didn't make that up later to paint it. It was in the book to begin with.
Right. Right. Exactly. And it's a bummer because all the real evidence of those things they had to draw were like the pictures that were originally taken back then were burnt down in the Library of Alexandria in Egypt. So we no longer have the photo evidence of what they had to draw based on memory, which is a huge bummer.
So there's the idea that there actually was photographs that were lost and not paintings. Because the Library of Alexandria is always a great catch-all because we lost so much knowledge there that you could put anything in there because it's no longer here. You could say there was iPods in there from aliens.
True. No one knows.
No one knows, but it's easy to throw whatever you want in there. I don't think that that's a really good.
I would say that there was no photographic evidence in there besides a bunch of writings and paintings, because I think that's a fact. Yeah.
There were definitely writings and paintings in there that were burned to a crisp. I don't know if there's any Kodak or Polaroids in there though.
Yeah, I don't think so at this point. So UFOs, paintings in the Bible.
So why don't we launch into the idea that he's going with there, because we got the idea that Jesus is part of that. It seems to me from what you're saying about that idea is more like, based on what you said before, is that there's these different parts in paintings or in culture as you go back that make it seem like there could have been extraterrestrial influence in the world, and that Jesus might have been one of the most famous ones because he's one of the most famous people in human history. And that he was part of that whole situation to begin with. One of the theories that I've heard of, which a lot of people love to talk about, is the idea of aliens coming down and shaping culture in the past. You already brought up the idea of them helping build the pyramids or any kind of ancient technology that we would not know about now and that they have left us at some point. So there's the idea of ancient astronauts that's gone throughout history. I looked up earlier, we could see things like the Book of Ezekiel, like you said before. We have the Nazca lines in South America, which are giant stone shapes that are, way larger than you'd expect for people to build. I mean, if you have a drone now, you can zoom out and look at the thing and it looks beautiful. But at the time, you'd have no chance to get that high up off the ground and be able to see it. So the people who are building it ostensibly wouldn't even be able to actually see the full picture.
Right.
Only have to understand it. That's the way to build it. So that seems to be generally the idea that seems to be the thrust of why people believe that there's ancient aliens, because there's megaliths and artifacts all over the world, whether it's on Easter Island in Egypt, in ancient China. There's these large structures that it seems to be like, well, how could people build it back then? Like you said before, they have very little resources and they had to, put it into certain endeavors that have to keep the civilization running. You don't really have a lot of time to build a structure like this, least of all a structure like the Nazca lines where you can't even see it. At least when you're building the Great Pyramid, it's a monolith to a dead king and everyone can see it from all around. But the Nazca lines, or the structures that are in Ireland and England, which are those big stone structures like the Stone Man, Stonehenge, things like that, it seems like why would people be building those if they didn't have the technology to do it at the time?
Right. I think there's two things. So like, you mentioned this before, I'm not going to take credit for this, but we do not discount. We do, it's quick to move over the powers of the human being, especially when there's
we can't imagine how they'd be able to do it because we can do it now with excavators and cranes, but how would they do it?
We can't. Right. Especially carving stone. I mean, I don't know if you've ever personally taken a hammer and a chisel to a stone and how long.
I am embarrassed to admit I've never tried to write on a tablet.
I have actually, but I got a Dremel when I was 12 or 13 years old. A lot of stories about the Dremel, but one of them is still in my can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I thought I was there. One of the things I did with the Dremel is I forget what drill bit it was. It probably wasn't a masonry bit, but it was still like a hardened steel bit.
Yeah.
And I carved our last name into this rock that I got on the beach about this big. And that took a long time. Something that has like 20,000 RPMs. So to do that, to do a hammer and chisel on something like Easter Island, where those things are
Massive.
at least 3 stories tall. And you know, it's like I'd say it's probably 2 stories tall above ground, and
And
they
they
found
went up to
below.
40 tons for each
Right.
of those heads.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you, well, a lot of them are up on the surface. People saw it at first. When you dig down, they realize it's
Mhm.
actually a statue that the largest ones are up to 40 tons, which is
Exactly. And I think that you know, don't quote me on this one because I'm pulling this one out of memory, but the type of stone that they used at Stonehenge is not natively found on that island. So they had to transport that
they're not
stone.
literally found on England, the island of England, or the United
Easter Island, which is off the coast of Peru.
Easter Island. You're saying, so not
Yeah,
Stonehenge.
yeah. Stonehenge. I know there was traveling involved. It might be limestone, and it's not. It
Yeah,
might have had to be like 40 miles or something, which you can wrap your head
right.
around.
Well, yeah. No, Stonehenge is nowhere near a quarry. It's on a grassy hill, so you can see
Correct.
how that would be
Correct.
a lot of travel there. But Easter Island, you mean the rocks that are made to build the stone structures? They aren't really found on that island.
No, I believe that they're not, but don't. But we should
That's
research that later. If we had some guy to do that for us, that'd be great. But I believe that those stones
okay.
aren't native to that island. So on top
Yeah,
of
yeah.
that, then you have to do a mining situation, and like I've you know looked into what it takes to split a rock. It's not that hard. I don't know what their access to things like iron ore was back then, but doing it
Well,
with basic
often they
hand
go through
tools.
the Great Pyramids, and when the Easter Island heads are dated towards, it was before humans were known to be able to fabricate iron at all. So it must have been
Mm,
the Bronze Age or maybe even the Stone Age. So iron was not a factor.
mm, mm. Yeah, so it's tough, and I don't think anybody has a true answer to that, and we're learning more every day.
Yeah.
A quote that I told a guy actually, the current
Wait a minute.
oh,
It's a quote that you told the guy.
the
That's a
quote I
new thing that we're going to do for every.
the quote I told a guy. I told so I there is a subject matter expert who happens to live in Salem, New Hampshire, and this
Really?
guy I've gone there twice, and he is the new owner. Well, his father was the founder of America's Stonehenge, and he is the current
America's
manager.
Stonehenge. Yes, I've heard of that. Yeah, they
America's
date that
Stonehenge.
for a lot longer after Stonehenge, right? Like 1,000 years or so after they think it was made.
He's thinking, and his team is thinking. They're not totally sure. It's
Okay.
really hard to tell. The reason being is this is way before Christopher Columbus, no question. So we got
Right.
1492 in the books, and they're saying this is before that. So this is Native American or something else. And they're thinking at first it was America's Stonehenge, which makes you think it's Native American. But
Yeah.
there's inscriptions on these big giant stone structures. They're not that big. I mean, they're small enough, but there's like a sacrificial table. There's all sorts of things. This is New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And they have some of them have the style of building plus some inscriptions are clearly from the Druids, which would date it back way before the birth of Christ.
Yeah, well, Druids and Druid history and religion, it goes back way back, as you were just mentioning there. But that's mostly associated with the Celtic Isles,
Right.
UK,
Right.
Ireland, and maybe some parts of northern France and Belgium. That wouldn't be ever associated with America. So that would be pretty interesting if they could directly correlate that.
Yeah, because we thought that outsiders landed on American soils in the 1400s, or maybe there was
I think
stories before that.
Vikings probably in the late
Yeah.
900s, they think,
Mhm.
were the first. But that would have been no one building any settlements at the time. It was very cursory
Right.
exploration at that time.
Yeah, exactly. They might not have survived the journey and that type of thing. So,
If they did, we don't know. There's no evidence that they ever stayed there.
correct. Yeah. Besides you.
besides maybe this American Stonehenge, that would be the idea, right? Because they don't have any evidence of this in any Native American cultures or throughout America that they were building stone monoliths or anything like that, right? I mean, famously, Native Americans don't have a lot of structures that have lasted a long time. Anyways, they mostly had structures made out of biodegradable items, canvas, wood, stone, things like that. But they weren't building great structures like they were doing in Central and Southern America, like the Inca and Mayans were doing.
Correct.
In North America, there's almost nothing left from thousands of years of people living there. Anything that's there is naturally occurring structures, whether it's like, the Grand Canyon, things like that. They're all massive structures that have just existed in nature. It's not anything that people built together.
Right. And some of the only evidence that we have left over besides things that we find like arrowheads and stuff like that are in the areas of the Grand Canyon, Arizona, Colorado, that whole neck of the pilots that are cave paintings because there's no humidity there, so they're able to have these cave paintings of bison and kind of stuff like that. Which they
Yeah.
do find some weird looking tall figures in those cave paintings, but I don't have much more to say besides that.
Weird looking tall figures.
And yeah, and my point before I get off track, the point of talking to that guy in New Hampshire is, and again, he's a credible guy too. He was a airline pilot. That was his career. And then his father started this, so he's always the family business, just going back and forth and just maintaining these
This is the
grounds.
person who's involved with American Stonehenge Project.
Yeah, he's the current owner of the property.
Gotcha.
And he's a talker. He'll talk to for a while. But he's a really interesting guy. But he was also a pilot for like FedEx. Yeah, right. Yeah, no, but he was a FedEx pilot for 30-something years. So that was his career, and now he's just doing this full time because it's exciting. But he rides a snowmobile. I was up there in the winter, but he rode a snowmobile from his house to work. Pretty cool job. But
wow.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. So so what I told him, that was actually kind of cool because I'm actually on a Facebook group called Megalithomania. Megalithomania that I'm not participating on, but I'm on it because it shares insider pictures. There's people on Facebook who share their own pictures of those megaliths that you see in South America, like Teotihuacan and other ones, especially because today's day they're finding more and more of them every day with ground penetrating radar. So they'll fly over with a drone, or they'll walk over with like this machine that puts right on the ground, and they'll see, hey, there's something under here, and they've uncovered a lot more pyramids and ancient structures with this new technology. So you're just seeing how involved this was. It's totally crazy.
Yeah, those are the ones that are more associated with the ones in Egypt and other places, saying that these are the large structures we're talking about. Talking about things like Stonehenge and American Stonehenge are relatively very tiny sites in comparison to old Aztec, Mayan, Inca sites, Egyptian sites, and sites like places in Thailand that are just massive structures. Yeah. And the difference between England and Central America in that fact, the reason why you have to actually use radar is because of the overgrowth of the jungle after. In Egypt, if they build it in the desert, it can be worn down by the elements, but it's not going to be covered up. And South America and Central America, you can build something and a week later, the overgrowth will take it over. So that's very fascinating to think that they'd actually be finding these structures still now. We know about them for years, and you're still finding new ones.
Yeah, exactly. And that just kind of like reinforces what I said. This guy is. I didn't make this up, but it's a really good thing because these days. It's hard to think of what like new exciting stuff. So back even in the the early 1900s, you had people who were actual explorers. They went to South America to go explore things that people didn't know about yet. Mainstream civilization.
Western civilization, as we know it, didn't know about it yet. I'm sure the people who built them knew about it, and people who.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, exactly. And those people were turned out to be, they thought. Not even 100 years ago that these people were savages, and they are not. They had advanced mathematics thousands of years before we thought they did.
They built the earliest calendars that we know about. They had a fundamental understanding of the movement of celestial bodies. They could track the different. They even understood. Exactly. First computer. Tell me about that. I'd never heard of that before.
Yeah, it was a mind device, and that's all it did. It tracked the movements of the planets around the sun. Planets around.
I don't know much more about and they said that the Mayans even knew about Saturn. They knew that planets as far away as Saturn they could see in the sky and track them. So they move in ways that stars don't move. Because when planets are moving in the sky, they can be as bright as stars, but they move unlike stars, which never move. Right. The Earth moves, and the stars will move in the sky as a group, but planets are the only bright objects that you can see that'll be in different places according to what time they are, because planets are moving independently, and when stars are not. So I think that's interesting that even back then they'd be able to tell that there's an idea of other celestial bodies that were in motion rather than just the stars. That's how they could track the calendar, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. And I always think, just to add to that, like I remember being a young lad thinking, well, all right, a young lad. These people were, born thousands of years before me, and they could build these things. So why, as a 12-year-old, why can't I go build a pyramid in my my backyard? I couldn't.
What's stopping you?
Yeah, who's stopping you? Still could, still want to.
I
That's one thing.
imagine
But the quote that I want,
doing that either.
what was
I don't
that?
think a lot of 12-year-olds were involved with building those structures in Central America either. I think there's probably adults doing it with a lot of knowledge of mathematics. I mean, the same way
I don't
that
think they're the
engineers
project
build
managers, but they
buildings
might have been the
now.
labor.
Yeah, they might be the labor. Yeah, they're getting water and moving rocks and things. Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
same way that you build structures now, right? People have the capabilities to build skyscrapers. You and I could research how a skyscraper is built in theory. We don't know how to do it, but it can be done. It's possible. In the same way people at the time when they built those structures in Central America would have understood that it's capable for humans to do it, but they wouldn't know how to do it themselves necessarily, just because it's
Right.
possible. I mean, they could do it.
Right. Yeah. True.
I think that's the major disconnect for me for the idea of there being an outside influence on these cultures doing it, because of the idea that there's a disconnect between our understanding of history now and even what was going on at the time. When people unearthed the tombs in Egypt at the time, people who lived in Egypt at the time didn't know the story of how they were built. So even the people who were living there didn't understand the history of what had gone on there. They figured it's always been there. We know that the pharaohs built it. That's what we have been talking about for generations. But when we were discovering the tombs of the pharaohs, when Western culture went in and basically tomb raided the entire Egyptian culture, and they did the same in South America. But they couldn't just ask people, well, how is this thing built? Well, it was built 1,000 years ago, and even people who were alive then were almost as foreign to the concept of being able to build it as we were now. I think that's why most people come up with that idea that there must have been an outside influence, because even people who live there don't know how it's done. So they couldn't do it at the time. So how would they have been able to do it in ancient history? And I think that's why most people are so latched onto this idea that it must have been an extraterrestrial influence to do it, because if they don't know how to do it and we don't believe that people who lived that long ago are capable of it, there must have been some kind of outside influence that was the cause of it, because how else could it be?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And the reason being is that there's also like this other thing where the Earth has ley lines. We do have evidence that things like Sedona, Arizona, what's another one? Where these like vortexes of energy are. Yeah, the Earth has a lot of mass, a lot of magnetic fields. Those poles shift. What was that?
Oh, you mean magnetic energy? So electromagnetism.
Yeah, I'd say electromagnetism instead of just regular magnetism. But the Earth has a lot of natural energy lines that flow through it, and you can see this in the way that like the trees form in Sedona, Arizona. I think that's a really good example, and I've been there. They do the twisty thing, kind of like twisty, weird shaped trees that do things. There's a lot of UFO sightings there and stuff like that, or weird lights and that type of thing. And it could generally just be again electromagnetism, like you mentioned. But they think that there were energy fields that crossed the Earth, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, whatever years ago, that it was an energy source for people. And that energy source you could be tap into to do things like lift, 40,000-pound stones to build a pyramid, type of thing. And then once there's been multiple, evidence, no recordings, but a lot of evidence that there were multiple pole shifts. And I think that's a fact at this point, that the North Pole wasn't always where the North Pole was. I think you go back it seems to be every 10,000 years based off of what I've read.
Yes.
It kind of moves closer to the center of Canada at one point, like let's say like 40,000 years ago. That's kind of where it was. And each of these megaliths that you see, like, again, like the pyramids of Egypt, I mentioned Teotihuacan, there's stuff in Asia. What's another one that we have pulled out?
There's also evidence that every couple decades, 1,000 years, so every 20,000 years or so, the poles actually shift back and forth. So the South
that
Pole
too.
becomes the North
Yeah,
Pole.
yeah, exactly.
So the location, but it actually flips completely magnetically.
Right,
I'm not sure
exactly.
how that accounts for, why you'd be able to tap into that. I mean,
well,
I don't understand why people would be able to plug into that idea. We couldn't do it now. I mean, the magnetic sphere of the Earth does shift all the time. It's the reason why we're protected by all of the radiation of the sun and also gamma ray bursts and things like that. It's a big shield we have, electromagnetism. Right. I don't know how that exactly would translate into technology that people had at the time, other than the idea that it's fun to think about that energy is like something that exists in the world and you could just harness it. I mean, the electromagnetic sphere existed as far as humankind's ever existed. We can't use it in any way besides the way we use it now, which is to shield us from dangerous cosmic rays. I'm not sure how people would be able to harness that energy to work machinery. I mean, we don't use any of that energy to do anything on Earth. We only use it to work a compass and not get murdered by cancer rays from outer space. We don't get to use that to actually build things.
There are some examples. There's one example I'm thinking of, but before I get to that, what I was hinting at is two things. They can identify. It's a new theory that came out within the past couple of years that you can. So say like the pyramids are supposedly 2,000 years old. They think they're more like 40,000 years old because it has a north, south, east, and west. And the north side faces where.
Let's go on just a little bit though, because I want to get this part right.
Yeah.
This is pyramids. They believe they're around 5,000 years old because 2,000 years ago is Jesus' birthday, which we talked about earlier.
We talked about right.
And ancient
sorry, I was 2,000. Yeah, I got all messed up. You're right. You're totally right. I was like,
the building of the Great Pyramid, I think, was around 3,000 before Jesus' birthday. So it's
which is totally wild. If anyone's wondering how long ago that was, it was 2,000 years ago to
plus 3,000.
Supposedly Jesus' birthday, and then before that, 3,000. So that's
so more than the time has been since Jesus' birthday is when they built
that. Yeah, totally wild.
That's a long time.
It is. But there's a new theory that there's actually a scientist in Boston, and I forget what university he's at, but he has redated history significantly based off of most pyramids, not most, all have four sides. And it seems that those sides represent north, south, east, and west. And all of them are slightly shifted. And he said, some of them are a little off. Most of, like, let's say that this piece goes towards north. So if you build one today, it would go directly towards the North Pole, which we all know where that is. But 10,000 years ago, that was shifted this way a little bit. So these pyramids are this way. So there's a whole, again, there's thousands of pyramids, and some of them are lined up with that pole, some are lined up with this pole in a way that's like this. So it's actually hard to disprove that. I love that theory. That's really cool. And that goes to my quote about the guy that I said to the guy in Salem, New Hampshire. I forget where I heard this, but one of the only things that are new to the world that we live in today in 2020, besides crazy stuff that goes on in everyday life, is the history that we do not know yet. We know only recorded history. There's so much more. It's amazing. And again, what was recorded wasn't necessarily everything, and there's also things that were lost. Some of my favorite things to think about too is that there's just so much more that has happened, and that's on like a macro scale, larger scale. But there's just so much more that could have even happened with smaller things. And I got to ask you,
I think what go ahead. You can ask me after I just finish up what we're talking about there. I think that's a little bit off kilter of what I would nail it down. I think that we know a lot of recorded history from what humans have experienced and recorded from themselves. We know a lot about history millions of years back through carbon dating, archaeology, ice cores drilling into the ice caps and trying to look for years back and taking different slices out and seeing how it happened in the atmosphere years apart. We can find out a lot about what happened on the planet millions of years back and even billions of years back. We date the Earth to about 4.2 billion years through what we know there. What you are talking about is more about the history of humanity. It's very hard to go back before recorded history because when people weren't writing stuff down and they were just doing oral history, which they think they did for thousands of years, we really don't know what happened. And all we can go off of is maybe we can find tools and burial sites and things like Stonehenge to kind of piece together what happened, but we definitely don't have the whole picture there as far as what humans were up to.
Because because the bears aren't going to tell us, and we happen to be humans. That's where our consciousness lies.
Unfortunately, we're trapped.
That's the way to do it. Is we're just in these big water bags with eyeballs, and that's where our consciousness fell into place. But the thing is there more? It kind of comes down to consciousness, because is there more to this? Like what brought it all in here? So you go. So that brings you to the search for the gods, whatever you want to call it, whatever's out
All right, so what did you want to ask me? Because I want to loop it back
Yeah.
around to Jesus being an alien right after.
Yeah, I think that's a good way. Yeah, because this could get completely
Get
out
on
of control.
ancient pyramids for another hour and a half.
Yeah, we could. What I want to ask you is, there's a lot of other things about people in the Bible around Jesus' time going and seeing crazy shit. Totally wild.
Crazy shit. That's in there. There's a lot of crazy shit.
There's a lot of crazy shit in there. Most of it is, splitting of water, burning bushes that talk to them on top of mountains.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically is my example. I'm going to talk about that one. Who was that? Moses? Isaiah.
Burning bush. Yeah. Famously, he talked to a burning bush that was supposedly God speaking to him and telling him how to escape Ramses and the Egyptians, and that they should head out into the desert.
Yes. So what do people go a little wacko after seeing a burning bush and the Salem witch trials have in common? Let me ask you that question.
Well, I think this is something we've talked about in the past a little bit, is that the theory that there might have been some kind of psychological things going on in people's heads. A lot of the idea of why people might have seen things in the past and recorded them is not that they made those events up as an allegory, which maybe could be what it is. A lot of the stories could be, this is the idea of it. The burning bush and seeing God could be the idea of talking to God, not necessarily that he set a bush on fire and then thought and talked to him. But if we're going on the literal translation of that, he saw a burning bush and he heard the voice of God in it, it could very well be the influence of hallucinogenic substances. A lot of times people were eating spoiled food. There's fungus such as ergot, which got into the water supply and the food supply of people that were in Salem, Massachusetts at the time of witch trials, and also in Ireland and England at the time, that caused people to see things that we would probably decide now would be nearly impossible to happen in actuality, which would be like seeing a burning bush and having the Lord talk to you. But at the time, it's as real as anything else, especially, back around thousands of years ago, because if they're dating Moses the same way we're dating Jesus' birthday party, Moses existed thousands of years before Jesus. This is at the time of the pharaohs building the pyramids. I mean, that's well before Jesus was supposed to have been born. So at the time, they had just as much to believe as anyone else at the time that could have definitely been possible.
Absolutely. And just to specify, so we talked about hallucinogenic substances that grow on plants. In today's day, you can see those as like peyote, which is sourced at DMT, right?
Yep,
exactly. So the burning bush hallucination.
You can also find a lot of those substances in Central and South America, which is where a lot of those Neolithic structures were built. We were talking about earlier, like,
and you have
master lands.
Exactly, and the burning bush was likely based on the bark of the acacia tree in the Middle East, which is something that is prone to more outside growth. And if you got a burning pile of peyote, basically, I mean, it's a similar. I believe. I don't know if imagine that it's. I want to speculate, but let's say it's something like DMT.
Let's speculate.
The guy goes up there. What?
Let's speculate. We're not hitting out any hard facts anyway. Let's speculate.
I know. All right. Well, anyways, but you go up there and you see, you see God for the first time because you're on drugs, and then you tell everyone now it's in the Bible. It kind of makes sense. It really does. And same with like the witch trials, like you mentioned, it was because they had the crops were all fucked up. They think that there was a crop problem, and then the crops grew mold, and then they ate it, and then all of a sudden everyone's basically doing edibles times 10. And these people are not crazy; they're just going a little nuts because they ate something that made them feel weird.
Yeah, exactly. That is a perfect transition right now of what I want to talk about to get back.
Let's go. Bring it on. Yeah, what's up?
So, I'm glad I went back and we talked about each of these theories. I didn't want to be slamming things down. I wanted to talk about it openly and have these ideas out in the air. This is more of the way that I see what's going on back in those times as well as now. Not that people were recording these events factually as much as they were nowadays, maybe, if things were happening. It's the idea that these people might have seen and believed, or just told stories and believed these things happening. There very well could be stories and depictions of art that say that people saw these outer worldly beings coming down and talking to them. It doesn't mean that they made it up or that people were
That's a great point.
completely
Yeah.
fabricating it. They very well could have believed a lot of this. I mean, people in the ancient world, everyone believed in magic and gods. No one thought that the world was, as plain and cold and mathematical as a lot of scientists see the world now, because of all the evidence we have and the way that we compile data, and we have to falsify evidence with each other. They all believed in these things. So when the idea of someone drawing an alien or thinking that there could have been outer worldly beings coming down and talking to you, it's not out of the question at all. If you told someone in the year 5000 BC that you were visited by an angel, they wouldn't think that you're crazy, because that is something that could happen to people. It's the same as you said, a wolf ate my kid last week. Oh yeah, I talked to a burning bush that says we got to do this. It's almost equal in people's minds. One of them is much more terrifying than the other one. They get to pick at the time. That's where it falls apart for me. The idea of Jesus being an alien or aliens coming down is that because these things were easily possible and pervade society, that these ideas were totally possible at the time. We wouldn't say today, if someone talked to us and said that they spoke to a burning bush and God talked to them, we wouldn't take them very seriously. We'd probably think they need psychiatric help, or that they were smoking too much acacia tree or peyote or something like that. I think that's closer to the reality of the situation is, because I think a lot of it is provable now more than it is back then to the ideas. And I think people come in danger when they start quoting sources from ancient writing as factual evidence of what happened, bar none. It's what you said earlier. History is not complete, and it's only what people wrote.
Not complete.
Understand. And it's hard to take them at face value. We're almost forced to take them at face value most of the time, because if we don't believe the people who wrote ancient history, who are we going to talk to about it? They're the only ones who said anything, so we have to take their word for it. And scientists now are better at differentiating, or at least trying to, what they were factually saying, what they meant metaphorically, or what might have been false and people were writing it down. That's all we had to go with. And I think that there's a big discrepancy between what people were writing down and what was actually happening, whether or not that's true.
True. Yeah. I mean, we only have 800 pages of like what actually happened, which is not enough.
Different cultures have different ways of writing down. A lot of it was written on those tablets, like you said, knocking it in, which takes forever. They don't have a Dremel back then, so it's more hammer and chisel.
Exactly. Yep. And the Dremel.
You have to take the word for it. But it's the same way that if a king told the story back then, he said that he conquered 10 kingdoms and never lost. You have to take that as his word to say that guy must have conquered 10 kingdoms and never lost. It's hard for us to prove otherwise. But the guy can also say that, a celestial being came down and from on high and taught him how to build a pyramid. We have to take that at face value too. I think that's where it gets dangerous.
True. Exactly. So I have to ask, so how do I phrase this? What is your exact thoughts on Jesus being an alien? Because here's the thing. Let's put some facts into place here.
Sure.
I think the Hubble telescope can see about 100 billion different galaxies, or has evidence to prove that there's 100 billion. But that's because the Hubble telescope was built, was it 30 years old, 20 years old, something like that?
I know I didn't go through.
So let me finish.
I'll do things, but I'll have the last thing I want to go over is the science part of this, and I have that exact.
Okay, all right, we'll get to the science because I'm going to go into something that's pseudoscience before we go into science. So that makes me say that. Do I think Jesus was an alien? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't really know if he exists. There's very little physical evidence that Jesus was actually real. They do have. I think there's only one piece of evidence that I've read about that shows that somebody was actually crucified back then. Like they found
names Jesus was crucified, because there's a lot of evidence that crucifixion was a form of.
Sure, but they only have one piece of, like, it's 2 feet like this, and it has the spike going through it. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's only one of those that they found that still shows this person was clearly crucified. As far as the skeleton goes, that's what.
And most of what historians believe that Jesus was a character in history is because of the effect that other people were affected by him. People writing about him, societies coming up and talking about him. There's very little evidence, like you said, that he was existing in his day. A lot of the evidence for him is, him affecting other people rather, or documents, letters written hundreds of years afterward. It's mostly the idea at a secondary source. Nothing is directly connected to the person at the time. It's more people being affected by him.
Got it. Okay, because
Most historians believe he existed, but they don't know to the effect that anything that he did in his life happened. But they do believe that he existed as a character and influenced people at the time.
because okay, makes sense. Because what I think is really wild is that, like, especially in recent days, because we've had to really reanalyze the U.S. Constitution, which is only what 300 years old, 300-ish.
Yeah. Well, it was 200 years old in 1970, so we're like 250 around there.
Can't help you with that. All right, 250. All right, so is how even 270 years ago, when things were seemingly a lot different. I mean, society, gossip, organized culture,
the Pony Express
the
was
economy.
The best broken mail. It had a guy riding a horse as fast as he could to deliver a mail.
Pony Express. Yeah. So things were pretty different. The only change here is that we have, a more liberal culture as far as actually not yes and no, but we have technology increases, which is really what it comes down to, and the fact that everybody's a little more laid back. We're a little more comfortable. You can say wasn't really comfortable in the
definitely more
1600s and the 1700s is a little better because you had more refined homes and stuff like that. But
a little longer, safer, less babies are dying. People are
childbirth,
dying.
So that type of thing.
Infectious diseases have gone down a lot. People survive them a lot more, notwithstanding the current situation.
Well, actually, I mean, it's doing better than most of them.
In general,
it's pretty bad. But yeah,
people don't die by getting their legs broken anymore or having diarrhea themselves to death.
Oh my God,
as much
can
as
you imagine that, dude?
Diarrhea is still one of the most common causes of death throughout
I
all of
know.
humanity. It's killed more people than all the wars combined. People shitting themselves to death has killed more people than any sword in a war that we know
Thank
about.
God I've got running water, because I'd be dead a long time ago. So
that's what they're
but what's amazing, so I'm talking about 300 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was incredible how the founding fathers of this country could predict human nature so well.
Sure.
Each amendment to the Constitution is so pretty much like, okay, well, we see what's going on. And they apply today still. Some of them are kind of fucked up, but overall. But then let's go back to, 1,700 years before that.
Now we're near Jesus' birthday again.
What?
We're right around Jesus' birthday again at that point.
Right back to that. Yeah, right back to Christmas. Even back then, I mean, I've gone back as an adult and going through these things, and it's still pretty incredible that 7 out of 10 things in there apply to life in 2020, and how you can kind of have some guidance. You don't have to follow it exactly. So it's really, I don't define myself as anything anymore. Have a different discussion when we're 38 to try to figure that out more. But overall, it's really, really interesting to read all the scriptures and say, wow, these all do apply to something, and you can't take something from them because these were people who put things in place before we were born, long before, that were reinforced throughout our lifetime to say this is how, basically, to kind of predict human nature and how to hold yourself. But my whole thing back to Jesus is, here's my wild theory. We haven't talked about this yet. This is a new thing.
Sure.
This is what I think. And why aliens have come up. Because what do you think of when you think of aliens, Joe? What is an alien?
An alien, extraterrestrial, not people who don't live in America. Make that very clear.
Yes, very clear. Important.
We mostly think of them as intelligent life forms, and in the way that at least we are. To me, they would certainly be more intelligent if they could make it to Earth, because we can't even make it to Mars right now. So it has to be more intelligent.
Barely the moon. Yeah.
That intelligent beings that are from outside of our solar system is, to me, what extraterrestrial is.
Yeah, it's a good definition.
What
do they look like?
So now that I don't know, because my idea of what aliens are is what I just said, and I don't know if that's ever been the evidence of what they would actually have looked like. I mean, obviously in popular culture, there's different versions of it, whether it's the classic, the gray aliens with the big eyes and the big heads, or we have, pop culture like Alien, the xenomorph with the mouth that comes out of the Predator. Like they look not like us and they look uncomfortable is the idea usually.
A little wet sometimes.
Certainly wet. Not all that dry aliens for the most part. Very wet.
Yeah, true.
Slimy even. What's like reptilian or like insect-like things that make us uncomfortable. They're
So you have
different.
the reptilians, then you have the greys, then you have like what do they call them, xenomorphs? Like something that looks like they're like Men in Black, like they're like us, and then they turn into these like creatures.
No, the
Or
xenomorph is the name of the alien in Alien.
oh,
With
okay,
the
sorry, I got
acid
confused.
blood.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know. I know that. I've heard the one you're talking about. It's like they kind of look like they look like humans, and they're taller, and they have like
Oh,
human
like that
legs.
guy, Mark Zuckerberg, great example.
Yes, yeah, the Zuckerberg style.
That type of alien.
The Zuck aliens. Yes.
So there's a whole nother thing. So why we're having this discussion. So basically the what I think, there's a whole other thing to it, is that imagine this. So it's 2020 in our years, which is really 2020 since this person Jesus was supposedly born, and before
Yeah.
that
Our birthday boy himself.
our Homo sapien situation back to cavemen dates back to at least 40,000 years before that, and then another couple 100,000 or whatever it is of people hitting people with clubs and moving on with their life. And that's crazy. But what I think would be even crazier is if we got the technology, which is probably not going to be what we think it is, to get to those 200 billion different planets the Hubble telescope can see, or has evidence of, and it views it very differently. It views like shadows. It's not like it's just a big telescope that says, "Oh wow, look at that planet." It's a whole like math thing.
It's almost impossible to see a planet outside of our solar system. It's so difficult to see them. But we have
it picks a sun.
You can you have to see the sun, and they cross the plane. Or we can also measure how gravity acts within different solar systems to see, well, there must be a planet there, because otherwise there's no reason for gravity to be that dense in that particular spot.
Yeah, and they can see a little wobble of that star that does this. Yeah, exactly, so if you've got a rope
and saying there's a planet, there she blows. I mean, it's hard to even see Pluto from our planet, and we're in the same solar system as it. So it's very difficult to differentiate how many planets are in or around each different star, but it's just innumerable. Even if only a portion of all stars had even one planet orbiting it, it would be more than you could count.
Yeah, exactly. Totally right. And to add to that, just like another thing is, it's like holding a kettlebell on a string and spinning in circles. Your body moves a little bit like this when you do it, no matter whether you like it or not. So if you have,
there's a measurable effect.
If you have a star the size of our sun that has one Earth, it's going to have a teeny little wobble. And then if you've got a couple other planets, it balances and it does wobble a little bit. So that's how they know, oh, hey, there's another planet over there. That's pretty crazy. And the planets that are habitable, based off of what we know about biology, is that they do exist, that are Goldilocks zone like Earth. But this is all side. Goldilocks zone, for those who don't know, is exactly what Earth is. It's right where it's supposed to be. It's not too cold. It's not too hot. It's not getting too much radiation. It's not getting too
as far as what we know now, that is the best setup for life to happen. I mean, we don't know any other version. The only life we know truly exists is on Earth. So as far as we're looking for life on other planets, we're looking for something that's similar to Earth, because we know that life works on Earth. We don't know if it works any other planet any other way. So we're looking for the Goldilocks zone, like you said, is a situation that's close enough to a star to be the right temperature and have liquid water on it that could possibly foster life on Earth.
Bingo, that's it. So what I think is totally wild is that if we were to somehow get to one of those planets that's like millions of light years away, that might be in that Goldilocks zone, because they are pretty far away. We're not even talking about the fact that the universe is probably infinite. No one really can quite figure it out, but it most likely is. Especially
I have that. You're killing me, man. I have this all written down right here. You're finish your point. I want to hit the thing.
All right, we'll get there. My point is, and I know you've got this. I fucking know you've got this one, because if you've written stuff down, you've got this.
I didn't write that much down, but we're tapping out on like what I'm about. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, what happens if we find this goes back to Jesus. It all ties in. Okay, it all tied together.
He's the star of the show.
It all ties into Jesus. What happens if we go 300 million light years away? We find a way to do that, which is probably not going to be by conventional propulsion systems. Not happening. Not a chance. That would take a bajillion years. I don't have the calculation because I'm I don't know, not that smart. Um, but and we get to a planet that is in their own version of the um,
Goldilocks zone.
nope, the Bronze Age, and they're fighting with swords, and they have
Oh,
chariots, and they have all this crazy shit. And we go there, and we're like,
yeah. There, it's perceived to
"What's
be
up
ancient
with
history.
this?" Yeah,
Yeah.
they're stuck. So we're in 2020, and they're in like 1320
Yeah.
or 820, whatever. What, BC? What's the Bronze Age?
Yeah, there would be about 3,000 years before the birth of alien Jesus at that point.
Of alien Jesus, the point. Okay, so I'm thinking of like horses and knights and armor and what's
Alien
that?
horses and alien knights. Are you talking about medieval period?
Medieval.
Because
Yeah, I think it's I think that's the funniest one to go to.
Yeah, we'll say about 700 to 1100 years after alien Jesus is
Alien
born.
Jesus. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I think that's the funniest one to stumble upon. You land a spaceship there, and you're like, oh shit. These people are wearing like it's like poor. It's like this like severely people wearing
alien
cloths and sleeping naked in like fields, and then there's like
yeah.
and there's these like
alien
kings who are assholes, fucking genuine fucking assholes, and then
yeah.
then people fighting with swords, and you're like, all right, well, okay, cool. Well, I went back in time, but I didn't go back in time because it's still 2020 over there, but over here it's like 720.
Right, but yeah, historically, technologically, it would be like going back in time because they would be so much less advanced than we are now.
I love that. What I would do, you know what I would do? The first thing I'd do, I'd put some fucking dirt over the spaceship and I'd go get drunk at the fucking like with all the people doing like eating the chicken legs and all that stuff and watching some jousting, which is really sad because people get really fucked up. But like this is okay, cool. I'm back in this day and I'm vaccinated from all their weird shit.
You definitely wouldn't be vaccinated against all their weird shit because you've never experienced
I know. I was thinking of our timeline over there. But yeah, they have other stuff going on, and it probably wouldn't be the same. They might have other versions of technology that are like, all right, they're fighting with swords, but they have cars, like something weird,
Yeah.
Probably not, because that's not logical, but overall. So the thing with Jesus is that this is a really big topic that is super controversial, that was originally about Jesus being an alien, and this will please the God people big time, because it's a hard pill for them to swallow, but it does identify.
As far as we know, most of the planet believes in some kind of deity. It's very, very. I think like on most developed nations, it's a larger percentage of people who don't believe it, or at least they believe in a kind of power that doesn't exist in books and things like that. But most people on the planet certainly believe that God exists and that most of this stuff we're talking about happened, if not factually, then at least in ideas.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Most is a conservative word. It's closer to all. The amount of agnostic and atheist. Sorry, the amount of atheist people are gaining traction for sure, for a good reason. But overall, we're talking about like the United States and England and kind of Western culture. But like,
this is what we call developed countries, and that's very generalist,
ridiculous. But like, yeah.
But it's countries that have more widespread education and technology than other countries, and that have had a longer period of time of people being exposed to multiple scientific ideas rather than cultural ideas that have been passed down for hundreds of years.
Right, exactly. So there's something crazy that we didn't talk about. It goes into aliens. It goes into religion, faith, all that stuff. Is that when this all goes back to 1947 when this kind of came out. And this is not from the TV show Project Blue Book. Those of you listening, this is not where I got the idea. That's a fun show. This is specifically about.
Did you wrap up? You went in your thought experiment on the spaceship to another planet back in time. Then now you're on.
Oh shit! Oh, you're right. Sorry. Today's episode is brought to you by Talisker. Talisker Storm, which is the best bottle of scotch you can buy for under $50. I promise. I'm a huge Dewar's fan. I think I should own some stock in them because I really, it's kind of my game. But Talisker Storm is like $10 more than Dewar's, and it's great.
Well worth it.
Yeah, well worth it. I calculate my drinks pretty well, so we're not drinking a whole lot.
Absolutely.
Um,
I just wanted to run a couple of things by you while we're still on the outer space aspect of aliens and not quite to the Jesus and Earth part. We're
right.
back in 1947. I would love to run back to that idea because I have more ideas about people like the person you brought up in the beginning. I don't remember his name exactly, David or Daniel something.
Oh boy, his name was Doctor.
Dr. Danny Bonaducci. That guy.
Danny Bonaducci. His name is
No,
I got it right here. His name is Doctor. Not far from Danny Bonaducci. Because he got all the right letters. Actually, his name is Dr. Barry Downing, PhD.
Barry Downing. Thank you, Barry Downing.
He's probably gonna shit his pants when he sees us on this podcast. That's what's gonna happen.
I have a couple of guys who are more on that vein. So yeah, I want to loop back around that. We can talk about that more, of the idea of that existing now. But while we're still talking about, the universe as a whole and the idea of aliens arriving on another planet or us doing the same thing, I wanted to touch on that.
Yep.
Right. Before we tap back into, the modern day.
So I got two things. So let's not, I don't want to get off my train of thought real quick, but
put a ball on it. Because when we get back to this, I start talking about modern day stuff and why people are believing that alien Jesus is real and he does exist.
Right. I know we're not going to get far from that because I've got the final. It's the concluding thought to our thesis.
Okay. No.
I'm not there yet.
No, go ahead. I just didn't know.
So here's the thing that
you're going on a train here. I just don't know where you're going with it.
Yeah, the train. The train's coming. The train's coming back around. I promise. So in the train, I'm going to finish this one little pit stop on the train. Is that
I'm not trying to stop you. I just don't want to end up back in 1957 and then I'm going to start bringing up space facts and it's like, well, you should have talked about that. We already went over that.
So to summarize what I was saying about going back to medieval times, if you take a flight over to 200 billion years away to some galaxy and on some planet, and there's still turkey legs or whatever, alien turkey legs with whatever it is. But it looks like this, is that, what if it's the opposite? And you get to a planet that is 200 billion years ahead of ours. They didn't blow themselves up yet.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine what they have, because they're going to look at us like, oh, we're aliens because we're coming on the spaceship and we have these helmets and this loud, landing of a space module onto their planet, which is not for nothing, people. This is what they're seeing on cave paintings and stuff like that. They're seeing people in space helmets with looking like fire coming around them or something like that, or like that picture in the Bible we mentioned from I forget what book that was.
Ezekiel.
Yeah, Ezekiel. That's kind of like what we would look like if in today's day we landed on another planet that was like stuck in medieval times or alien Jesus times.
They probably wouldn't see you as an alien life form with a spaceship. They would see you as some kind of otherworldly deity or an angel or whatever the equivalent is.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine the power you have. You land down there and you go, everybody, listen up.
And then they go, what are you saying? We don't understand your language. We have no idea.
I know how you solve hunger. And they go, what? Then you implement some sort of like system to grow crops. And they go, what? Corn now? This type of land? What? You kidding me? So all of a sudden you're gone. It's very easy formula. That was my thought on that. That's kind of the full circle.
Conquistadors landing in South America, a lot of them were seen as deities because they were dressed in all these shiny adornments and they came over on ships. Really? You don't have to leave the planet for people to see you as a god. Yeah, Spanish conquistadors were a lot of the native cultures. I don't think that's what they were, but they were accepted as that, and they leaned into it in the way that you might if you had the same thing going on.
I don't know, man. That could be a real good example of the history that the Spanish conquistadors wrote, not the natives that were there. These people could have been in on the coastal areas of South America, like, oh fuck, look at these shitty boats coming here. I know they're really big and stuff and they're full of gold, and these like white, gross, fucking sweaty guys go off and go, we're gonna take over you guys. Like, hey, we're like got this awesome banana thing going on and like this like avocado thing, and we got these huge pyramids, so you guys go fuck yourself and get off this land and don't try to rape us, because the last ones they did and they cut our fingers off. His name is Christopher Columbus. He's a piece of shit, and that's what So that's what could happen. So they might have said, yeah, we're not impressed because you have more of this specific mineral that grows underground that we already know about. It's all good. But you have guns, and we know that that's better than knives. So just please.
Yeah, but you're really putting, obviously we have their perspective of it, not the native people's perspective, because they didn't all the writings.
They didn't make it that far,
you're putting on a much more modern lens of saying, yeah, they probably said, go fuck you. The last guy came around here, and we're on to you, buddy. No, they weren't on to them. They never met it. I mean, Montezuma let the Spanish into the city. They let them run rampant through the city. They let them all in there, and they said, look at all this gold, and they said, yeah, come on by. They didn't treat gold the same way that Spanish people did because they had so much of it. They didn't treat it with the same reverence that Europeans did, and they took full advantage of that, and they used that to help destroy that culture, which
they're
is
all
awful.
gone. Yeah,
but it wasn't because they said, all right, buddy, I'm watching you. They let them right in. They were like, all right, come on out, come on down, boys. And they shouldn't have done that, obviously.
Just like Japan in the 1800s, they did that with the
like that. Yeah. And
we're not going to go there. That's another conversation. But yeah,
that's all. My point is that you don't have to go across the universe for that to be a concept. And I think that your point is very valid. That if you did arrive on another planet and they were at that same point in history, you would have probably been seen that way, especially if it's way more of a discrepancy. I'm just saying it happened on Earth and it was the same year. So if you go all the way there, I don't see why it would be any different that you would be treated as some kind of, otherworldly powerful being because you have this knowledge and all this power that you wouldn't have at the time. Seems crazy. But that is mostly why I think that it's very unlikely that aliens have ever arrived on Earth to any degree. And if they did, I don't think they would be helping us build a stone structure and leaving. It seems very odd that they would want to be doing that. Because if we showed up, it would be nice if we would go there and say, hey, here's how to build a stone temple, but don't worry about all us and our spaceships and all the shit we have. You're not ready for that yet. We'll teach you how to stack rocks nice and tall. And wouldn't that be something? It didn't seem very likely to me. I know that if humans went to another planet right now, the way we treat our planet, we would definitely kill them and take all their shit the way that the conquistadors did. I don't think we're too much different than that now. I don't think we'd be helping them out at all. And I think that if aliens came to Earth, it might be that they taught us some technologies like ancient agriculture and things like that. But I would have thought that there'd be so much farther advanced enough. If you can get to Earth from outside our solar system, you would need hyper advanced technology that's much more advanced than agriculture. And obviously, you could say, oh, well, the people at the time, they wouldn't be able to understand that. So all you can teach them is simple things like agriculture and how to build a tall structure. And maybe they did want to be worshipped, but it doesn't seem likely to me. I just wanted to run through how big the universe is and how far you'd have to do to get there.
Bring it on. Yep.
I just want to say our furthest thing that we've ever sent away from planet Earth, so as far as we've gotten, is the Voyager spacecraft that went out in 1977. We basically took this thing and sent it out. We wanted to see how far we could get it out of the solar system and obviously tracking different planets as it went by. It's the information we have on Saturn and Jupiter early is because of Voyager going by them. Right now, the Voyager spacecraft that left in 77 is currently 13 billion miles from Earth. That's how far it is now. That's pretty far.
How many
it's still,
is that, do you know?
It's not even a light year.
I didn't think so. Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Because a light year
is
how long? Yeah. How long it takes light, which is the fastest thing we know in the universe. As far as we know, it's the universal limit on how fast things can travel. How far it takes one photon to travel in a year. So 365 days in an Earth year, it's light. That's how long it takes. That's very, very far. I didn't write down how long a light year is. It's massive. So from Earth to the sun is 91 million miles, just for where we are now. Voyager's already gone 13 billion miles. The speed it's going at right now, that's been going the whole time uninterrupted, is 10.5 miles per second, which is also 38,000 miles an hour. And it's only made it 13 billion miles, which it actually isn't even, it's out of our solar system as we know it, which means it's past Pluto's orbit, but it's not past the large sphere of small debris that's outside of our solar system called the Oort cloud. All these small dust and debris and planetoids and things like that. Some of them are almost the same size as Pluto. So the fastest thing we have and the farthest we've had it hasn't even gotten out of our little section yet. That's how tough it is to actually get things. And that thing's going 38,000 miles an hour. And that's as close as we can get right now for getting things out of here.
which is a fun fact, which is about the speed that the space shuttle has to achieve to get back into through the atmosphere of this Earth that we live on. Just because it's a wild ride to get back in and out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and out. You have to get out of there. It's an
Yeah, you're
insane
fighting
amount of energy.
gravity, and then when you come back in, you're fighting the atmosphere, which causes friction with it between the spacecraft and the surface of the atmosphere, which makes heat.
Yeah, and that saves us, much like the magnetosphere helps us from radiation. Our atmosphere saves us from all kinds of space rocks coming down and pelting us every day. We would look like the moon otherwise, because the moon has no atmosphere. And that thing looks like a kid who didn't wear enough Clearasil in high school. I think it's all pockmarked up.
It's all messed up. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So to your point about how many stars there are around and how likely there is to be intelligent life somewhere else, or at least simple life, it seems completely unlikely to me that there isn't just tons of aliens all over the universe. There's just so much stuff out there, so many stars, so many planets, so much space. It doesn't make any sense to me that it wouldn't exist out there. The only part that it loses me on is that they already came to visit and they didn't have much to say besides, or let's crash.
Besides what? What'd you say?
Let's build a stone tower, or let's see what your butt looks like. I'm going to put a metal rod up it and find out what kind of you're going to do. So in our Milky Way galaxy, which is the galaxy we live in, and that anything that you've ever seen with your eyes, even with a telescope, you've never seen outside the Milky Way galaxy. It's as far as you can see with a telescope. You need professional observatories or the Hubble telescope to see outside of our galaxy. You need a very powerful telescope that me and you would never be able to have. So anything you've ever seen is in the Milky Way galaxy. It's massive. We're on the edge of it. So if the Milky Way galaxy is a spinning disk relatively, we're on one of the edges, pretty close to it. And in the Milky Way galaxy, there is about 100 billion stars. And we have one of them called the sun. That's just in our galaxy. There's 100 billion stars. Let's say maybe 10% of them have any planets. Scientists think that much more of them have planets around them, maybe more than half do. Even if 10% of them have planets, if even 1% of those has a planet that's in the Goldilocks zone, that's a billion solar systems with potential Earths in it. I mean, that's a ton of potential planets that could have life on them, if not intelligent life, whether they're back in the before alien Jesus or post alien Jesus time. That's a lot of potential life forms that exist, even in our galaxy alone. And galaxies are very far apart from each other. The closest one to us is Andromeda. It's a little bit larger than us, but it is so many light years away that it's inconceivable to make it there. Even if you could go at the speed of light on a spacecraft, you'd have to put people in stasis going at light speed, which we can't do even close to. We can't go anything even close to that. So they group galaxies into something called a local group, because in the universe, it's so large, they're trying to block it out and see, well, what are we going to define this into? Milky Way is a galaxy. Andromeda's a galaxy near us. Our local group has about 30 galaxies in it. So that's 30 times relatively 100 billion stars. That's even more possible planets and even more possibilities of civilizations growing on those. Each local group is part of a cluster. So that's groups of galaxies, part of a group called a cluster. And there's about 10 of those clusters in what you call a supercluster. A supercluster is a group of multiple clusters of multiple galaxies in each one of them. They think that most superclusters are about 200 billion light years across. So it would take one photon 200 billion years traveling at the speed of light to go across it. That's one supercluster. So it's a group of clusters, which is a group of galaxies, right? That's how big a supercluster is. And they think that there's about 10 million superclusters in the observable universe, as far as we know. So there's 10 million groups of clusters that are about 200 billion light years across, and there's about 30 galaxies in each one. And each galaxy has about 100 billion stars. That's a lot of planets. I find it hard to believe that there couldn't be aliens there. And if you have the technology to get across all that, you are hyper advanced. And when you come across a civilization that's eating lamb chops and jousting, you might not be that interested if you can go that far and have technology that advanced. I usually compare it to how you don't really care much when you step on an anthill, not because you're concerned about the ants' lives or that you hate ants, you want to destroy ants, whether you dig a little ditch for them or you pour water in, it's so inconsequential to you that it's not like you're making a decision one way or the other. You're just existing. And ants could see your effect on them. If you step on the anthill, they can see how you affect them, but they don't understand that you're even there. It just things happen to them.
True.
And as far as I think that if aliens are affecting us, it's more in the way when we step on an anthill, not because of destructive capability, but more that they don't have any comprehension of what's going on, but we're affecting them in a greater way. And I think that if aliens were affecting human civilization and that Jesus was one of them, it's such and on a microscopic level that I don't see that. It doesn't seem to me that would be affecting us in the same way. I mean, they would just be so advanced that I don't see why they would even care about it unless they were advanced at the point that they had time to care about it because they're just interested in that way, like us building a ant.
Or something else you didn't mention yet that you probably thought of, or we put those ants there, or I mean, as an alien, you'd be more interested in an anthill if it's an ant farm in your bedroom. So
yes.
So the other thing is transpermia, the transpermia thesis, where
panspermia. And I got it right up here.
Yeah. So unless how many years? So 65 million years ago. Can you tell me what happened to this Earth?
There was a major extinction event in the late Cretaceous
period. There was, and it was called the dinosaurs are all dead now, except for that fucking huge ass alligator that we all saw on social media a few days ago.
Yeah, yeah.
That thing was wild, right? Did your mom see that in person?
I don't think you saw that.
Dude, that thing was dude. Its legs were. It looked like twice the size of my forearm, and it was just going through there. We're like, all right, well, the dinosaurs are back. It's 2020. It all makes sense.
All the dinos. They think it crashed in the near the Yucatan Peninsula, which is pretty close to all those Aztec and Mayan temples we were talking about them looking at. Not far away from there. They think that's where they
say Mar-a-Lago.
Listen there. Yeah. Right,
so anyways, besides that, he didn't. That was not our founder. But anyways, it's got to be a little wild to think about the fact that this giant ball of, I mean, how was it, like 11 miles wide? Like, it wasn't that big, but it's going 45,000 miles an hour, so it's a little bit different.
Around that, but going at that speed with that amount of mass, it's enough to do what it did, which is destroy life on the planet.
Yeah, think about. No, I got no relation besides the speed of sound is like on at sea level is like I think 770 miles an hour. So you're going essentially 45 times that, if not more, and you're 11 miles wide, which is about the distance.
I don't know how much that weighs. I mean, if you take a baseball, if you take a baseball and you accelerate it to nearly the speed of light, you'd be able to hit the Earth and change the course of human history. Is that much speed and that much weight of an 11-mile cosmic rock? It rocked the world.
Rocked the whole world. Yeah, exactly. So it brings me to think of a couple of different things. There's been, whether we like it or not, whatever anyone believes in here or not, who is listening, because we're live.
Testing?
Yeah, testing. Can you guys hear us? We're streaming on CNN.
We're live.
The whatever anyone believes or not is okay. In modern day, there are some events that really change the course of human history, and they're so small compared to a giant asteroid. One of them is going from paper to plastic. We went from the dollar bill to a credit card. People thought this was fucking wild in like 1980. Like, yeah, no, my money stays in my pocket. It's paper. I'm not doing this technology plastic thing. Look at us now. You use cash here. Fucking
money.
No one uses cash, especially in the pandemic because of the virus. But overall, so you've got the creation of the Earth, and you've got like the whatever happened within the dinosaur age, and then the asteroid came. That's tens of millions of years of gap, but like. We had the little the little worm on the ocean that turned into a after millions of years evolved into a T-Rex, and then whatever it is, because evolution fucking is real. Whatever. Yeah, exactly. So we got some wild stuff like that going on. So that was a major event, and then the next major event is the extinction of the dinosaurs. And then a couple million years later, tens of millions years later, humans showed up. But we apparently started off as little things that turned into
5
monkeys.
million years later.
What?
Well, almost 65 million years later. That's
Yes,
we-
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
65
It's a
million
great
years
way. Yeah.
ago.
Yeah, we're like,
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
about
65
million
million
years later,
minus 400,000 is
yeah,
like,
basically,
okay, so
yeah,
maybe 65
almost
million. Yeah, it's fine.
except for the last
Yeah.
little part.
It's
where we
like
showed
this. It's like the same thing. So, and then humans showed up, and isn't it a little weird that that's how it went down? Unless we don't know
How do
things,
you,
and
how do you
maybe.
mean? How is that weird? It's only it compared to what? If we never existed, or if we existed 65 million years ago?
If it was just
I think
dinosaurs.
it's only strange to us because we are basing it off of the fact that we're here at all. It's not that weird. Why are we
We're
only
so
here?
much more. What
It's like saying,
evolved? What evolved?
here's the last part. It's like it's not the last part. It's the part we're at now. It's like asking a baby why it wasn't born in the year 1000. It's like, I mean,
I
1000.
know, but like,
Well, yeah, because there's no other alternative. You either are here or you're not. I don't think it's odd that humans showed up so late in the game. It's odd that humans showed up at all, for sure. It's odd that apes showed up. It's odd that mammals showed up.
true.
It's all odd.
But you know,
I don't think we're any more special than them. We just can understand things more. We can build things. There's nothing about us that makes us different than them from a biological standpoint or from the cosmic history standpoint. We just can talk about it. No, I can't hear you. Yeah, I lost it. Can you hear me? I know, I can't hear you at all.
How about now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, cool. Maybe it's the thing. Maybe I touched it.
Maybe.
We good now?
Oh yeah, you're
All right,
loud
cool.
clear.
So that was a turning. Whether we like it or whatever we disagree on, that was a turning point. Is that there was a ball of rock that showed up and blew up in the Yucatan Peninsula, and then all of a sudden humans showed up, a couple million years later.
Mhm.
So aliens could have come here to help further the course of human history. They could have said, "Hey, you guys are really kind of acting like cavemen over there. Let's try to spice up a little bit. You guys are we are you just
You're acting like cave aliens.
you're acting
We
like
call
cave
them-
aliens and people. You
call
guys are
them
like us like a
cavemen.
jillion billion years
No, we're
ago."
cavemen. They're like, yeah, you're aliens. Because
Yeah.
to us, they're aliens. Don't forget, aliens don't think they're aliens, right? Because if we went to another planet,
we are aliens. We are 100% aliens.
We're all aliens. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
right. You show up on Mars or something in
you're
the
an
Andromeda
alien.
galaxy, you're definitely an alien to them.
Yeah.
But that's a huge turning point, is that we're there, and then maybe they showed up to help guide us in the right way. And there's a lot of UFO sightings. Specifically, so let's just fast forward to post World War II. Maybe I'm not even going to go there yet, but like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, even probably closer to present day too, is like nuclear weapons. There seem to be a lot of sightings of UFOs interacting with nuclear weapons in the silos they stay in, like intercontinental ballistic missiles and that type of thing, because they're like, hey, we know we're going to leave you guys alone until you are on the brink of extinction. Then we're going to Before it was like, hey, we're going to guide you to some sort of sophisticated civilization. Now you guys are all there, but you're still like a class. You'd probably go this, but you're like a class 8 civilization. Class 1 would be is all renewable resources.
We're at class 0. I think there's 3. We're at 0.
We're at 0, which means we're still
I don't know the exact name of this idea, but the civilization classes, we're at 0. You're at 1 if you can harvest all the resources of your planet. 2 would be to harvest all the energy of your planet, not all the resources, all the energy of your planet. 2 would be the energy of a star, and then 3 would be the energy of your entire galaxy. So we can't actually harvest all the energy that's on our planet right now. We do things like we dig up things and burn them.
Yeah,
but if you could actually transfer all, an example, if you had solar panels around the entire planet that took all the sun in, and we have extracted all the energy from the Earth also, that would be like what they consider class 1, because we have complete mastery of all the energy on our planet.
Right. Okay, so yeah, exactly. We're still eating animals.
We're working our way up.
Yeah, we're still burning fossil fuels. We're still doing these things that are detrimental to the world itself.
Yeah,
you're right. So they're trying to get us to that point where it's better, and they're probably already there. if
I
there
would
are
think
aliens
so.
coming, I would say that if they're
Maybe a lot of
coming here, it
fans.
means that they are, because you can't
They
get
gotta be at least class 1.
yeah, at least class 1, because
Small
I
class.
mean to get
Okay.
millions of light years away, you can't burn fossil fuels or have solid rocket
Oh
boosters or
no.
whatever it is. It's just not happening. So
Yeah, you
that
have.
brings the whole my whole next segment of discussion. Are you ready for it?
I am. I'm gonna ask you real quick though. Do you
Yep.
mind if we take a break? Because I do have to use the bathroom.
Let's take a quick pee break. I'm going to do the same.
Wonderful.
Perfect. Oop, fuck. All right, we're back after our
Oh, I feel so much better.
pee break. Oh yeah, much better. I got some pretzels too. I wish I could share with you. It's so good.
That's all right.
Hmm.
I ate dinner before this because I knew that we were going to be talking for a bit.
Oh yeah, me too. What'd you eat?
I had chicken noodle soup. I'm not even sick.
It's great.
Got the celery, carrots, all your food groups. I think the food groups are, what is it? Broth, vegetables, bird, and then whatever.
Bird, yeah.
Whatever celery is, I guess water. And then those are the 5 food groups.
Mm,
Oh, no, I
so
missed
good.
cereal, of course. Nothing.
I didn't hear the last part.
So what do you want to launch into? Because I did want to touch on panspermia, because I think that's a way for the way that we are both viewing this. It comes together in that theory because a lot of science, it doesn't have a lot of proof of it, but on the same token, there's not a lot of evidence against it. It's more of an idea that could definitely be possible. Panspermia, I'll just read the definition they have up on Wikipedia, which is the hypothesis that life exists throughout the universe, distributed by space dust, meteors, asteroids, comets, or spacecraft. That's the alien aspect of it, carrying unintended contamination by microorganisms, or if you want to put the alien thing in there, deliberate bringing those over. Basically, the idea is that life has existed on other planets, and it could have arrived here through deliberate delivery from an outside life form, or possibly, and seems more evidence backs it up just because we have very few evidence either way, is that it could have crash landed on something like that, large asteroid. There's a lot of life forms, not many of them, but we have certain life forms that we found that can exist in the vacuum of space and are still able to procreate and asexually procreate afterwards, much like the tardigrade. I'm sure you've heard of the water bear, the microscopic organism that can survive in space. It even has little feet, little face. It's an extremophile, exactly. So that seems to be a way we can kind of merge these two ideas together into something that seems like something that we can agree on, mostly that it's very possible that this could be the way that life has existed. It's really hard to nail down the beginning of Earth life, and there's a lot of different theories on it. I don't subscribe to this one completely. I think there's a different one that's probably more what I think that happened, but this one is very popular and definitely could hook up with the idea of Jesus's forefathers, the aliens, actually seeding life on the planet, much in the way that you mentioned would be making your own ant farm rather than having an ant hill that exists in the universe. What do you think about panspermia?
It's a great question, Joe.
Also, I didn't mention it's a very sexy name. I want to put that out there.
It's a sexy name. Yeah, that's right. Panspermia. What did I call it originally? Transpermia?
Transpermia, which is even sexier.
Yeah, I think that's when you put a turkey baster up a girl and squeeze it if you can.
Yes, and that's totally
transpermia.
Totally, and we're totally for that. And we're for all kinds of spermia.
Whatever, all kinds of spermia. It's all good, What do I think of transpermia? I mean, I can't disagree with anything you're saying. I just know, like, it's the most efficient way to get your species. So here's a great example. Say your Earth is going to shit. Say you're billions of light years away.
Let's try to do a thought experiment. I don't know if I can imagine that. If the Earth is going,
right? Yeah, your shit's going to fucking dick, and you're
imagine it.
And you're an intelligent, like, you guys are like, all right, we gotta survive, and we're all gonna die. So there's not really much we can do, but we can send this fucking rock full of shit, aka human spores, a couple billion light years away to go hit this fucking great planet because we're smart enough, because we're at that point. And unfortunately, we're all going to die, but these are going to be our, like, ancestors that are going to, it's going to take them a couple million years, but they're going to come back too. So all of a sudden, our DNA as Earthlings is really driven from another planet. And specifically, let me ask you this.
Please.
Or tell you this.
Because I already have a question for you, but what you just said, you said human spores, which you lost me on right away.
But
spores don't exist.
Yeah, I know they don't exist, but there's, we're talking about billions of light years ahead of ourselves. There's got to be some sort of, like, DNA programmable situation that.
Yeah, well, I think there's a case to be made if they have that much advanced planning that they could seed. What I understand with panspermia is that life beginning on the planet was singular cellular life forms, and they could have planned out that.
Right, that this is going to turn into this, and
billion years, it'll eventually be intelligent life, much in the way that maybe they started or they've seen other planets start. I can see that. I don't think they dropped human spores down and then it grew into people, though. I think it took
no, not at all.
Yeah,
I don't think so. I think you're completely onto that, because I don't. We can't disprove it. I mean, I don't know.
I want to at least clarify that, because I think that we still think the same way how life developed on the planet. It's hard to say where it started. It's
very hard to say where it started. And it's very hard to say where not just life, but where intelligent life developed, and how you went from a fucking worm to this. and that's a little odd. So we can't disprove that there wasn't sort of human aspect there, because there are multiple species of pre-humans like Homo sapiens and Homo erectus and other.
Yeah, I think there's a couple hundred what we would call, you know, ape species that have existed within the past, multiple thousands of years. And then there's less hominids. Hominids are species like Australopithecus, Homo erectus, other human-like. They call it hominids because homo means like us. It's kind of like opioids, hominoids. It's a similar kind of idea. The idea that they're similar to us enough that we consider them cousins to our species. No one actually thinks that, ancient apes that stood upright and used tools and had tribes, had kids, and those kids turned into people. It's that they are very similar to us, and over generations and generations, evolution happened where it got closer to what we call Homo sapien, which is what we are.
Right, exactly. So back to my theory on transpermia. So I was on a thought train. I lost a little bit. Oh my God, say it again. Panspermia, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, panspermia. Got it. Ball people. I had a thought. I had a train going there, and I feel like I lost it a little bit. Can you recap where I was going with that? Do you know?
Yeah. The idea is that the idea could be like, yeah, they planned for this to happen. They wanted life to continue on other planets, and they wanted to seed life in. And there's no reason why we have to think that they think the same way as us, that 3 billion years is a long time no matter where you are, because the universe as we know it's only 14 billion years old. But there's nothing that doesn't say that they could put, unicellular life on planet Earth and say, we know how life evolves within a certain time period. It'll become sentient, and maybe that's just, maybe they're like galactic farmers, and you put the seed in and it doesn't make corn in one day. It takes a whole year to grow the harvest, but they say, hey, we want life to go throughout the galaxy, and we appreciate life. We are life. So they are planting these seeds all over rather than dropping fully formed intelligent species on planets. They're starting it the way that life starts, on a lot of planets, possibly, which is with single cellular life, and it takes billions of years to evolve, but eventually it makes a fully formed ecosystem around the whole planet. Maybe that's the idea.
Good point. So I got nothing to say to that besides I do agree with you on that.
Well, I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm saying that that's the idea.
Well, I agree with your idea. So what I was, my thought process, the train I was going on here is actually something that Louis C.K. said.
Oh, okay. Oh, this is good. This is good.
This is good. Yeah, it's a Louis C.K. quote. I'm paraphrasing his quote, but he said, how come we're not, in the middle of a snowstorm out there naked going, I fucking love this shit. This is what I'm built for this. How come we can't handle it? We're so weak. Whereas you go see a polar bear, or you go see an alligator, or you go see, I know that you have different cold-blooded, warm-blooded things, but we seem to be the ones who are so much so,
we're very poorly suited for surviving on the planet with nothing but our bodies.
And quite frankly, exactly. Nothing. Yeah, exactly.
Naked and Afraid is a show on TV because of how insane it is to survive naked in the wild.
It's so hard.
Which is what every other species on the planet is always naked outside. And
my mom's dogs, they're house cats for the most part, but overall, they stem from things that are we're gonna go out there and we're gonna take it all, and we need a combination of plants and animals to really survive. And sorry, vegans, it's hard being a vegan,
Yeah. We need technology. We need ideas to survive as we do now.
Technology and ideas and these things, and that's why we're the pinnacle of the predators, and we're at the top of the food chain, because we do have the intelligence to say that lion is 8 times my body weight and will destroy me, but I can find a way around because I can predict what it's going to do and then kill it. But that's why we are the most deadly animal on Earth, no question. But
But I do think we're particularly suited for living in a certain environment. I mean, the idea that we can't walk in a snowstorm naked and die is true. Our species is not evolved to live where we live. We live all over the planet, we're not supposed to. It's because of our intelligence and our developments and technology that we do that. You can learn to kill a bear and wear its skin that it has naturally around your body. So you use bear skin and bear fur to be like, I can survive here. We're supposed to be naked in Africa and still having to use tools and still having to build structures, but we're not supposed to be all over the planet. We just are able to do that because of the technology we have. But our biology hasn't caught up to it yet because we did it within, like you said, we did it within a couple 100,000 years, which it takes a lot longer than that for a species to evolve completely.
That's a good point. Yeah, because we went indoors probably as soon as possible, especially with caves and stuff like that. So we didn't
of course,
develop any sort of survival mechanism to the cold, to extreme heats, to lack of resources and stuff like that. Like,
and if we didn't, we wouldn't be here to talk about it. So it wouldn't even be an option. It's not like, well, why did we do that and other species didn't? It's like, oh, we had to. If we didn't do that, we wouldn't be here talking about it. We'd all be dead, and that'd be it. I mean, ask Neanderthals what the fuck happens. I mean, if your species dies out, that's it for you. It happens as simple as that. And Neanderthals did a lot of the same things we did. They hunted animals, they wore their fur, and then they went as far north as we did up into Europe. Only Homo sapien made it much further around the world because we were more adapted. And there's a lot of theories about that. I'm just saying that, like you said, we are particularly poorly adapted to living around the whole planet, yet we can still do it because of our intelligence.
Yeah, and then once you create enough mechanisms to help yourself survive and build an economy and stuff like that, and you destroy the planet completely, that's when you send an asteroid to another planet full of human seeds and worms to go, or spores, whatever you agree with, to go populate another starting colony.
Maybe.
Yeah. And then what you do after that is you, if you did find a way, maybe you created something sort of like a Death Star. But you can't take everyone to Death Star because the Death Star can't support everything, you know?
I mean, like a space station.
Yes, but the Death Star, not a space station.
A space station with a planet-killing laser on it.
If you have to, yeah. And but it's big enough to support more than like 6 people, aka the Death Star. It's a great place.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Death Star is still a space station. It's a massive space station, but it's not, you know.
The ISS is not big, but the Death Star is really big, right? Like, Death Star's pretty big. So.
Yeah, but they're both space stations. One of them is the size of a moon, and one of them is just like a living room.
Yeah, both have artificial gravity. They both have regenerative.
Oh, the ISS doesn't have artificial gravity though. That's we haven't done that before.
Right. Sorry, I was thinking of a mixture of
2001,
Alien and 2001, where it spins and it creates.
Yeah.
Sorry,
that doesn't exist, but that is a way to create artificial gravity. Theoretically.
Exactly. So, so you've got people living on the Death Star, and then they are developing their technology because they brought their, by the time our society is completely burnt out, we're at the turning point now, according to scientists. But we'll see how that goes. But you can speculate that they're at a point where they go, okay, well, we sent these people here, or this asteroid there, millions of years ago. Let's check in on them. Okay, whoa, they're developing nuclear technology. They might kill themselves. Yeah, we didn't plan on that one. Let's go stop that real quick, so they can continue a path forward to survive. And it's more important than we think. So that's kind of my theory on that one. Is, do I believe in panspermia? It's tough. So my God, panspermia. I'm like, I want some stuck in that. It's like Transylvania, the movie, and like, I'm just caught up in it. Panspermia.
I believe in a homospermia, and that's it. I mean, heterospermia.
So once you're on that one, as far as panspermia goes, it's a tough one to disprove or prove. I don't really know. I mean, I'm not educated enough to have any sort of understanding. What's next on your list? Because I got something too.
Gotcha. All right, so just to loop it back around to the last thing I want to talk about, which is the idea that Jesus is an alien. There's multiple.
Yep, that's what I was thinking. Mm-hmm.
There's multiple people on planet Earth right now who are very popular. Not scientists. I wouldn't go that far because they don't actually practice science in the way that you're supposed to be able to prove things with peer reviews and things like that.
Scientific theory.
Yeah, I would consider them more
speculators.
Intellectual. Well, yeah, for them, they're doing more than speculating. Though they're coming up with ideas. They're more like gurus, or like hunters of truth seekers kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Two of the big names that I came up with are the one that's closer to us now is David Hatcher Childress, who you might see on a lot of things like the Ancient Aliens
I
TV
do.
show
Yep. Mm-hmm.
and things like that. He is a particularly interesting person because he believes in a lot of the things that we're talking about today, which is, the idea that aliens have come down and they're actually have influenced the way that human culture has developed and all of our theories. He also believes in a lot of other things too, though, which that's what makes me nervous, because when people are coming up with an idea, a lot of people who are scientists not only have to go through the scientific theory, which means hypothesis and disproving your data and having peers review it and double-blind studies, all things that are part of proving theories of the natural world, not just because you need to prove yourself to somebody like you're some kind of big shot, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I have to prove myself to you. It's about being able to recreate results and then provably do things. It's the reason why we can even create things like the International Space Station. Without provable science that works every single time, you can't actually do things like that. I know people nowadays, we're so used to it already being the way it is, and this is the way things are. It takes hundreds of years of people provably having to do the same thing and recreating experiments over and over and over again and having to work every time and having the math work every time the same for things to actually come to fruition. And when people start looking into things that are interesting, I like that, because people should be thinking of new ideas. You shouldn't just be shut down from your ideas. It crosses the line in me when you start thinking that your new ideas are just as valid as people who are dedicating their lives to studying science. And if your ideas are not able to be held up to scrutiny,
mm-hmm.
they might still be true, but there's no way to prove it. You have to put them to scrutiny, and if people can shut them down, you have to go back to the drawing board. The most technically gifted and intelligent scientists in history all have had their ideas shut down, not just by other people, by themselves. When you go into an experiment, here's your idea, you have to try to prove yourself wrong, and then when you prove yourself right, you have to put it up to the whole world, and they have to all try to prove you wrong. And if they prove you wrong, you're supposed to bow out and say, all right, that wasn't right, back to the drawing board. You're not supposed to say, I'm going to fight tooth and nail to prove you guys wrong. My ideas doesn't work. So guys like this person, this is a couple of lists of what he believes is factual. Nikola Tesla, that's always a famous one. He's got all kinds of crazy ideas at the time. That guy was a proven scientist for a lot of things. UFOs, ancient astronauts, things we've been talking about. Seems all hard to prove at that point, but not completely out of the question. We start to get into anti-gravity technology that has existed, he claims. Vimana, which are spacecrafts that are written in Hindu texts, which are about as close as that the eye ring from Ezekiel. It's reading a text and saying, well, they wrote this down, therefore it did exist. We just lost the idea of it. Then it gets into time travel, cryptozoology, the Yeti, Sasquatch. It starts to be like you're doing a catch-all for all strange things that are hard to prove. And even though I'm not going to disprove any of those things in one conversation, when you start throwing a wide net on like that, it starts to make me a little bit nervous that you're actually trying to prove these things right, rather than just trying to reach for strange and interesting ideas and then nailing your stake down and saying that's got to be true too. I mean, do you believe that aliens are actually part of the idea that we change the world, ancient astronauts, things like that? And that's the same way you believe in the Yeti and Sasquatch? I mean, doesn't mean they're all not true, but I find it hard that you're casting a wide net and saying this is all true, and no one believes me because they don't want you to hear the truth. Well, maybe those are all true, but you should dedicate yourself to one of them and try to prove them right before you start trying to. Everything that anyone's ever said that's strange is all true. That seems very odd to me.
It's very hard to be the jack of all trades, the master of none in a category like something that is extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and this is all of those times a billion. But there is one thing that we haven't covered yet.
What's that?
That ties these all together, and it can be the adhesive that brings them all into the same category. I can't really speak to cryptozoology regarding like Sasquatch and stuff like that, because
I don't. The chupacabra, Sasquatch, the Mothman, that's all that idea, right?
Ogopogo, the Loch Ness Monster. Did you say that already?
Oh yeah, the big hits. Yep. Loch Ness. We have a great history with Nessie.
Yeah, Loch Ness has a lot. Nessie has a lot of other locations as well, like in Canada and in Japan and Lake Michigan, I think. And that's another conversation, because I don't think that that's I don't know if that's real or not real.
Right, but yeah, my
Is a,
idea is not to disprove that. It's just that when people start lumping in all those things together, it starts to kind of discredit you because now you're just saying everything that's interesting is true.
yeah, that's why I think it's weird. I mean, like I've
And
done
I want to get that away quick though before you move on. I don't want to say that I don't think this is not interesting. I think Ancient Aliens, the idea is interesting as hell. It's
yeah,
so interesting. The idea, the whole thing's interesting. That's where it gets dangerous in my mind, though. Not dangerous like it's going to harm anybody, but dangerous scientifically that just because you want something to be true, just because it's interesting to you, doesn't make it true at all. It doesn't matter what you think or what's cool or
mhm,
not cool, interesting or not interesting, what is going to be more beneficial to the world or not. Truth within science is true whether you believe it or not.
right,
It just
right.
is the way it is. And that's why you can do the same math problem and build the same plane engine and it works whether you understand why it works or not. It just works because that's the
Right.
way that science works.
It's
So
right.
just because Ancient Aliens is cool as hell, it's an interesting idea, that doesn't make it true just because it's interesting. I wanted to get that out of the way just because that's it. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. But it's also interesting because there's so much unknown. I'd say most things are unknown about it. So it's one thing left to study where it's going to take archaeologists. It's going to take
Yeah.
a lot of people over the next 100 years, if not longer, to really get to the bottom of this because we don't know. Because there were so many things in the way of progress up until recently, including religion. Um,
Yeah.
Specifically, probably that's the driving force behind no progress because everything was the devil or this is, as kids, like I said, we were raised Catholic, and I had multiple fears as a youngling, but like my biggest irrational fear was aliens. I was terrified. No idea why, but it was like the scariest to me.
Hmm.
Not anything
That's the
else.
unknown too, right? The
What?
fear of the unknown. We all have it. The fear of the unknown. You don't
Yeah,
understand it.
yeah, yeah. I don't understand it, and we still don't. But it was something like that. So I just think that it's something else that you can try to go down a wormhole on because like again, if you buy a 1962 Saab, whatever it is, you go, hey, this is cool. All right, I picked up this thing for $2,000. This is nice. I get to learn more about this car. It's gonna have problems. It's gonna make mistakes. I'm gonna drive. It's gonna have some weird vibration. Then all of a sudden it won't start one day, and I'm gonna buy the owner, like the mechanic's manual and learn more about that. But there is an end point to that. All of a sudden, you really become the master. I mean, I've never done it with Saabs, but other cars.
Yeah. You can understand it.
There's a start and a finish to becoming a master on specifically like the last car I owned was a new car to me, an old Mercedes. Where I had to learn the
Yeah.
fuel injection system and why that thing's had mistakes. Like there's an end point. You can really get to master that. And all of a sudden, it's not
Yeah.
interesting anymore. And you go, it was really fun for the first year because I was learning so much because I
Mm.
just wanted to learn more about something. So this is a topic that doesn't really totally happen. And we don't have the time, unfortunately, being younger and that type of thing, and to be able to devote our lives specifically to researching these type of things. So we're basically given we're basically able to research what we are told, which is fine.
We have
I
some
mean,
people who have more time and more expertise, and we're taking what they say and we're
excerpt,
having people work. Yeah.
right, exactly, which is okay.
Hoping not enough people tried to like stop them in the meantime and had to prove themselves up along the way. That when they get to say something like that, for example, if you have a doctorate in something, you're saying, well, they were tested along the way. At least they know something about it. They didn't just come up with that idea. I'm not just taking their word for it because of their name. I'm trusting that there is a system in place that has them learn something to the expertise that I'm going to take their word for it in some degree.
Right.
Because we don't have the time to do that. And they did. We have to listen to them.
Majority of having your PhD in anything is studying what was before you up until your point. So then you
Right.
create your own theses on that. So like
The knowledge
so
that's
you
already
don't, you don't just walk in and say, well, fuck all that's been done for the past 200 years on this topic because I know better. You go, nah, you should never walk into a restaurant thinking you're going to be able to run the damn thing from the kitchen as a day one food runner. Not happening. You might think that, but that's an ego problem. But overall, the part of having a PhD in any sort of topic is that, hey, I'm going to study all of the other stuff, all the other works of other people, brilliant minds that got to this point. Then I'm going to make up. I'm going to find a topic that wasn't brought to that point and bring it there. And you really become the expert in one
that
little
knowledge
segment.
and build on it with my new ideas that after the building blocks I already have here. I
Right.
think that's a big problem with ideas like this, though, that makes me nervous is that people are giving equal credence to people who have no expertise or have shunned any of the ideas that have been established, and they bring up their new idea, and it's given equal footing to someone who has all these expertise that's built on these building blocks. Just because they can both yell as loud and they can both make a video on YouTube does not mean that they're equally experts or that they have any credentials according to each other. I'm not listening to a scientist because they have the piece of paper that says I'm a scientist. I'm listening to a scientist because of all the people that made them, who they are along the way, and all the people who, when they come up with a new idea, are able to discredit it, and they are able to realistically understand what the hell is going on. The problem with a lot of pseudoscience and things nowadays is that the same person or two people can have the exact same level of volume, metaphorically, as another person. This guy can make a YouTube video and say all this insane shit and say, well, what's to make it, just because this guy has a piece of paper, he's, he knows more than me. It's like, well, not it's a piece of paper, but you don't have the same footing. I don't need to listen to you in the same degree because you're the food runner coming in and telling me how to cook a souffle. I mean, I'm sure you can cook a grilled cheese, but if you're not, this person isn't inherently better than you at being a human being, but they know more about cooking. So I'm going to listen to them. Sorry.
Right. No, you're completely right. So it's tough. So where we stand today as individuals in this is that we're just having a conversation about something. We're not trying to solve the problem or really identify, was Jesus an alien or not? No, this is just what we have known and what we can take in based off of what brought us here today as individuals. That's pretty much it. So because neither of us have put in the time to travel the world, research ancient scripts and
text and scripts.
Yeah, exactly. All these things to become a world-renowned expert on one super small topic. Like I got one of my good friends from a previous job. He has a Civil War in he has a PhD in the Civil War regarding European policy, like very specific. That's how he describes it. That's not actually what his thesis was. His thesis is like very much specifically related to like two different pieces that are even more defined than that, and that's kind of what it takes. So like,
to be an expert,
to be an expert on these things. So my thing that we haven't talked about, and this is something that probably not many people do go into too much depth, is that there are, as far as alien encounters go, you've seen First Encounters of the Third Kind, right? Fourth Kind? Third Kind?
I have. It's a great movie.
Yeah, so you have Third Kind, which came out in like the 80s and 90s, which is exactly that movie, and it's got the Devil's Rock or whatever. What's that rock called?
Yeah, well, I forget what it's called, but I wanted to talk about
Devil's Rock or something.
We were talking about Stonehenge. I was like, I wish I knew the name of that because that's what I was thinking of, like, naturally occurring structures.
Oh, that thing is so cool, and that's where that movie, obviously, the ending takes place. It's so cool. Then you have the Tower. Maybe Devil's Tower. It might be Devil's Tower.
Could be. It's the Devil's something. I'll tell you that.
It's definitely Devil's something. And I would think Devil's Tower because it's very thin. It's not very thin. I mean, it's still like
it's girthy.
800 yards long. It's not thin, but it's pretty cool and tall. But so you have, First Encounters of the Third Kind, which is that movie. Great movie.
Yeah, it's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. They're talking about Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind, right?
Well, you have Close Encounters of the Third. So this is what I'm saying. So, Project Blue Book was a segment of the Air Force that was put into place to research encounters with aliens or UFOs. So the project lead or the department lead or whatever you call it was Dr. J. Allen Hynek, and he was an independent scientist who was paired with a guy in the Air Force. And then he had to, as a skeptic and as somebody who does practice scientific theory, go into these situations where he saw things like starting with Roswell. What's there?
What his area was? Was he like an aeronautics expert? Was he astrological expert or astronomer? What do you think it was?
I don't know.
I'd have to assume it was probably something to do with aircraft.
Yeah, aircraft and I guess aerial phenomenon like
biology. I mean, you wouldn't bring him into the alien autopsy.
Who would you hire if he was? I mean, he was brought into the alien autopsy, which they disproved, by the way. That was fake.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm just saying if you're gonna have someone study an alien body, you wouldn't have the same person that's studying a UFO, right? Because there'd be two different experts.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
The kind of guy who can take apart a body, who's a surgeon, is not great at building,
mm,
SR-71. There's two different people.
True. True. So what he was, I don't quite know, but I know that he was. Anytime you have to validate anything like that, like an encounter, prove or disprove it, you need an expert in something. So let's just say I don't know. He was a scientist, but he is the person who had to categorize what these encounters were. So the close encounters, the first kind, second kind, third kind, fourth kind, and fifth kind. There's 5 of them.
Okay.
And let me pull them up real quick because I have a brief understanding of them, but I do not know the exact definition. So it's pretty clear once you understand it. So we're going to go over it real quick. So
Let's do it.
close encounters, the first kind, sighting of 1 or more UFOs at a distance of 500 feet or less. Simple.
So just being able to see an unidentified flying object in the sky. That's
within 500 feet. Yeah, exactly. So if there's an encounter or they have to go investigate something, they say, okay, well, that's just to put on paper, that's a first kind encounter. Second kind is sighting of UFO with associated physical effects. An example is heat or electrical interference. Basically, you're in a car and the car shuts off, lights go, whatever it is. That'd be the second.
So not just visual, but actual physical evidence. You can see it affecting the world around you.
Perfect. Exactly. You see some sort of something that isn't just a.
So it could be just your eyes. You can measure it in some degree.
Yeah, exactly. So you could see a birthday balloon that's silver floating in the air, and you think it's a UFO. That would technically be a first kind, whether it's a birthday balloon or not, because it's not really doing the environment around it.
Right. Because going forward, just so we understand, UFO, everyone always associates it with being an alien spacecraft. That's not what that phrase means. It just means unidentified flying object. You go from there.
Exactly.
Unidentified flying object. It could be a weather balloon, could be a helicopter, could be an alien spacecraft. They're all UFOs. It's just as you learn more about it is when you have to understand what it actually is. UFO just means you don't know what it is. It's in the sky.
Yep, exactly. It generally could be anything. I mean, we've all seen things that you go, what is that? And it goes away and you go, what, probably just landing lights from your plane. I live near Logan or something like that, or.
Yeah, I've seen a ton of UFOs. It usually ends up being a plane, but it's viewed before I can eye it, and then it becomes an IFO.
Yeah, exactly. I got a great example of that after this. It's like, somebody wrote in the residents of Marlborough, Massachusetts to something they saw in Harvard. And I was like, I know what that is. It's not a UFO. This is some kid who was like, I don't know what this was, but it was wild. I was like, I know exactly what that is.
So yeah, I just want to establish that before we get to the other 3 kinds, because I just want to be like,
yeah, it's really fun to disprove, which is kind of what Dr. Jano Heineck did. His job was to disprove these settings. Most, and a majority of them, he wasn't able to do so, but except for autopsy, that was very clear. So first encounter of the
scientists' jobs are though, right? Their jobs are, like we said earlier, their jobs are to disprove things, and then when you're disproving things, you can come to your conclusions, and that becomes what you realize is more accurately the truth. His job isn't to go in there and say these are all aliens. His job is
definitely aliens.
Him to go in there and say they aren't aliens, and if you can't say they aren't, then now we got something here.
Yeah, right. So close encounters of the third kind, sighting of an animated being. So
now we're bringing in like some kind of
you see a figure
kind of being there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not universally recognized, but typically you could see an aircraft with something on it, or you could see some sort of weird phenomenon with a being-ish in the forest or something. If you're on a fishing trip or something, that would be a third kind. So you're getting up there now.
Sure. Now it's an alien.
What was that?
Or not? Yeah. Now it's starting to look like more that it's an alien or some kind of unidentified.
Yeah, there's something rather than just a object. Gotcha. So this is when it gets kind of weird. So, yeah, specifically. So, close encounter of the fourth kind was. Sorry, I think it was called. Was it just called The Fourth Kind? The movie.
Yes.
Yeah, and what was that about, Joe?
I believe that's when you introduce aliens to your parents and things starting to get really.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Not just texting anymore. Like now, it's starting to get serious. The fourth.
It's starting to get serious. So, so the fourth kind is about abductions. So, yeah. That's specifically it.
So
It's
when they interact with you, with the actual person, the observer.
yeah. So basically, all the other things, effects don't
The fourth
affect.
kind, you're part of it.
Yeah, it doesn't actually affect you. It might scare you. It might startle you. It might shock
Sure.
you. But all of a sudden, when it's a tangent. They're actually touching you specifically as a person.
Affecting you. Gotcha.
So, um, wow, you know what? Actually, I learned something today. I thought that it stopped at the fifth kind. It goes on to the seventh kind.
Oh boy.
The fifth
What's
kind
the
was
sound?
the fifth kind is really my point here. That was kind of about Jesus. But we'll
All
just
right, good.
just for
Because
the
Jesus
sake.
was an alien. And let's not lose that point through this whole conversation.
Yeah,
Jesus was an alien.
right. That's it. So, the fifth kind
Calories of the
is
fifth kind is when you get crucified for the sins of humanity.
yeah,
And then
exactly
you
right.
become the
And
leader
then we move to
religion.
the sixth kind, which is yeah. No, but the fifth kind is voluntary bilateral contact between humans and extraterrestrials. So
Mm.
specifically, what that
So
means
first
is
contact.
this is human initiated alien contact. That's what it means.
Gotcha.
And then they respond.
A means of communication.
Yeah, they respond. The
Gotcha.
sixth kind is kind of fucked up. I didn't know this.
Ooh.
Sixth kind is death of a human or animal associated with a UFO sighting. So, example of this would be like cattle.
Cows.
Yes.
Cow mutilation, yeah.
And this is even weirder. I didn't know this. There's a seventh kind. Again, these were all created in the 40s or 50s or 60s by Dr.
Yeah.
Hynek. The seventh kind is the creation of a human alien hybrid either by sexual reproduction or by artificial scientific methods.
Wow, that's quite a leap from murdering a cow to having sex with an alien and producing offspring that's viable life form. I mean, it seems so unlikely because of the fact that you could have sex with a chimpanzee and it still wouldn't birth anything, and they are 98% the same DNA as us. So it seems insane that an alien would be able to procreate with a species that's not their species, but a completely different planet. They would have to use a lot of whatever technology they might have in order to accomplish something like that.
Yeah, so weird. I mean, who knows what they could be doing with it? But there is a
Gene splicing or something to that degree, right? It would have to be a genetic.
yeah, something. Who knows what they're doing? But like, there was a movie that came out. It was like a documentary that came out called "I Know What I Saw" in 2015, I think, 2014, 15, 16, something like that. And
I know what you did last
there's
time.
one guy. I started dying laughing because he's this old dude who lives in Vermont or something, and he kept getting he had paintings for his entire house of him with all these aliens, and he's like, I gotta abduct these beautiful women up there. And I'm like, okay, all right.
Oh yeah. I've heard a couple of these stories where they're like their faces look different, but they look so sexy.
Long, beautiful, sexy hair, and they extracted his semen into a Tupperware container.
yeah.
Taking it from him. And I'm like,
you can't just tell me your aspirations and fantasies. You have to actually tell me a story that actually happened to you, man. He's like, no.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna disprove that, man, but I'm like, all right.
Wouldn't that be great for you, you know?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know why they'd. The thing is, like, that's the thing is though, like, how are we to judge? I mean, we don't know why they'd want his. He might have some weird DNA that we don't know about. What
did his wife think about that whole story?
She wasn't interviewed at the time.
I don't think he had one. Is my point.
He's just trying to cover up the fact that he was sleeping with someone.
Yeah. Why do you have glitter all over your face? Well, a funny story about that. Huh?
Weirdly thing. I was driving the truck down, 101, and all of a sudden, 3 days later, I show up with glitter all over me, and I get this semen container of Tupperware, and
yeah, that's how the aliens did it. I thinking about the guy. I have a strong suspicion that he's not in a committed relationship with someone. I think that he probably pretty lonely guy.
Yeah, I think maybe he's going a little nuts.
A little bit.
It's possible. Who knows?
Well, that's the kind of stuff that
I'm not a scientist. I don't know.
No, me neither. But I don't know. That's the kind of thing that throws a wrench in shit, though, because you hear for every story you hear that seems a little more plausible and it seems a little bit like less like they have an intention and like a narrative they're going for. You hear a story about a guy who says he banged a hot, sexy, tall, blonde alien, and you're like, well, wait a minute, because this guy had a pretty good story, and then you're doing this one. You're kind of throwing in the good story with the bad. Like you're kind of ruining the whole thing. Like if 50 people tell stories that seem interesting and plausible, and 50 people tell stories about why all their cows are dead, it kind of spoil, like a bad apple spoils the bunch kind of thing, where it makes it hard for people to take it seriously when so many people are saying kooky ass stories about it.
Yeah, there's a like MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, the acronym. There's it's basically a database of UFO sightings and reports
Yeah.
of like this kind type of thing, and there's a lot of them, and you'd be shocked. So like if you can go to right now and look up sightings, it's a whole database.
You heard them. Look them up.
What?
MUFON. They're ufologists.
Yep, guys, MUFON, ufologists. You can go back to several years back, and you can see in your area within year-round Providence the sightings that come in, and people report them, which is weird because I can't figure out how to report them. I was like, how do I call MUFON and tell them there's a sighting, or is this what
I think you have to join you have to pay union dues and stuff to get in that thing.
It's your confirmation bias problem. If you're part of MUFON and you're calling it UFOs all the time, it might be that every time you see an airplane with landing lights on, you go, what? You know, and then they disappear. I mean, dude, that's
everything looks like a nail kind of deal.
Yeah, I mean, that's my big thing is like if you see it, you know, like I live 14 miles north of Logan Airport, and like I'm right on the flight path, and they put their landing gear down right over my house. It's so cool. But they start the process over the Atlantic Ocean, then come over my house and type of thing. And the landing lights are, depending on the pilot or what their protocols are, they put the landing light on early. And if it's nighttime and kind of cloudy and it's coming right at you like this, you see the light, and then the airplane does this to turn, and all of a sudden it's gone.
Oh, the light's gone.
Light's gone. You go, what? I just saw a light for 1 minute. Now it's gone. What was that about? And you can sometimes, depending on how hot or how the wind is, whatever it is, you might not hear it.
There's a lot of different variables in there. Yeah.
What's going on? You know, so the thing is, my whole point about MUFON is that they have a statistic about they might get 9 out of 10 calls are very, very easily disproved. You live near an airport, it's like that. But they do have a solid like 1%. But let's just say 1% of their calls are greater.
Even 1% is a massive amount because of the amount of
tens of thousands. Yeah, go completely at this point. Those are the ones that people look into. They go, okay, we got some. They source. They try to qualify or validate all the sources. But
that's good.
The whole thing with Jesus being an alien to wrap this all up.
I do have one. I can wrap it up for you.
Yeah. I won't forget. So you bring it on. Yeah. What do you got?
I'll help us wrap it up now, and then we can. I'll keep talking to you, but I think we should probably wrap up the initial podcast here.
Yeah. I want to also wrap up my thoughts on Jesus being alien. So you go first, and then I'll go.
I'll do one more thing to wrap it up, and then I'll give you the final thoughts, and then you can just whatever you want to do to wrap it up. And I'm not going to stop you at that point.
But I got one good point that we haven't talked about yet.
Yes, and I don't miss that. I'm just gonna help us wrap back up to what we're talking about here. You can share the screen, right? Because I'm about to send you a link to a short video it's a little bit about what we're talking about here. Just because I had to at least give you an idea. I did finally get your email after we already started talking. Go figure.
All right, so you're sending me an email.
I am.
Okay.
So I'll talk in the meantime while you do that, so we're not completely dead here. So this is the Aetherius Society, which started in the 1950s from a guy named George King, and he was one of the people who believed that Jesus was in fact an alien, much like the guy we talked about earlier. And he believed that not only Jesus was an alien, but multiple other figures such as Mahatma Gandhi and other gurus. He studied all kinds of yoga, supposedly. There's really no proof for how much he actually studied it, but he started an organization called the Aetherius Society, which was founded on the idea that aliens have not only visited Earth, but they have lived among us, and much of them are spiritual leaders in society. And the people who still practice with the Aetherius Society today, they do believe they can contact aliens, not in the way that you'd call them on the phone or use satellites. They believe that there's energy that you can speak to them through, and it's more of a spiritual idea. And that Jesus Christ was one of them, and a lot of major historical figures were, such as George King, who was an alien himself. And after studying many years of yoga, he did realize that, not that he became an alien, that he always was an alien, and he was enlightened to the idea. He became a conduit or a voice for the aliens. And this is just a short clip of his society. Now it's still alive and well. This particular clip is them in the United Kingdom, and a reporter came out to talk to them about it and see what they how they practice their religion of not really worshiping aliens as much as it is living among them.
All right, so we're gonna skip the 252 and we're gonna hit play.
Yeah. Now we're at the meeting.
It may or may not record sound, but Joe, when should I stop playing it? I didn't read the email, so I read 252.
Yeah, I'll tell you when to stop it. It's not that long. It's about a minute.
But the funniest thing I just want you to know about this is that this is exactly how I was going to wrap this up. So
this is why
dead balls on how I was going to wrap this up, and I was like, I got
we're on the same mindset here.
All right, so I'm going to hit play, and then you tell me when it's done. All right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, here we go, guys.
There we go. Oh, I can't hear anything now.
Wait, what?
I can't hear it that much, but also if you're gonna eat pretzels, mute your mic.
Oh, you can hear that? Shit, all right.
I can't hear the video, but I can hear you crunching down on pretzels.
I'm gonna mute my mic when I eat pretzels because we're all watching a movie now. But what can't you hear about the how is the sound coming through? Because guys, we're all new to this.
Yeah, I can't hear any of the sounds in the video at all.
I don't know how to do that. Let me see. I'm just trying to look at like the options. Share computer sound. I got it. Nice. Okay. All right. This will work. Okay. I'm gonna mute myself so you don't hear my fucking pretzels.
All right. Gotcha.
Man's gonna eat. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear it. Got that?
Will do.
Okay.
And tune in to this wonderful, wonderful power in this place, put here by the beloved Master Jesus himself. So let's raise the hands, please. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum.
Almighty Father of all creation, let your light flow through this world now.
It's kind of like sorcery without witches and more cagoules. Someone's given me a coat and hat. Some people are definitely better at doing it than others.
Ah, the planetary one, who had, at this time, sacrificed peace. I'm one of the lucky ones. I was born into it. I was never forced into it. This is one thing that people may misinterpret, that, you know, my parents were like, you have to join this society. There's nothing like that. It was totally natural. And I just know there's no ways that this could just be made up. You know, so it comes from somewhere. You know, either our masters made this up, but he must be absolutely extraordinary. Or it's space intelligences or angels.
I came across Dr. King's teachings along my research. My memory became so much more sharper and clearer. I was starting to become more psychic. I was starting to pick up thoughts from other people. And for me, that was like proof that Dr. King's teachings and his philosophy and his practices are real.
Some psychics can see the lower end of the spectrum, which is the fairies and the pixies. And I've seen some of those as well.
You've seen pixies?
Yes, and my pets have seen them.
Really? Did they tell you they've seen them?
Well, we all looked up together on one occasion, and there was this humanoid figure about so big.
I started my spiritual journey about 7 or 8 years ago. I guess the best way that I can explain it is it's a bit like a scene from Star Wars, actually, The Force Awakens. Did you watch that?
Yep.
You might have, okay.
Do you ever have moments of wanting to use the energy for something a bit different?
Society. I'm just happy that they're still alive and well, and they're practicing the beliefs of George King still today, who was a firm believer of Jesus Christ being part of it. And a lot of people in the group are still worshipers of Jesus Christ. They just think that he was an alien.
I got one question. I mean, what's a pixie?
I think it's a fairy or in mythical idea, fairy. But to them, I guess it's a lot of people who are part of the society probably are under the umbrella that aliens are existing, and they're talking to them through spirituality. But I think that if you asked each individual member of the group what they believe, they would all say different things. I don't think everyone believes there's fairies. I think everyone believes they're psychics, but they all kind of believe there's some kind of spiritual energy that can be transmitted from species to species, and that aliens don't have to look different than us. They can actually look exactly like us, and it's more about their knowledge and their energy rather than any kind of scientifically provable thing that makes them aliens. So Jesus was an alien to them.
Yep. So yeah, I'm right on board with those psychos because
I like when the kid goes, "You've seen Star Wars?" He just goes, "Yep."
Force Awakens, because trust me, when you go like
Force
this,
Awakens, the Disney ones, not the old ones.
yeah.
Okay.
So it's just so funny how we both decided. Just everybody who is listening to this, the Dylan and Joe Basement podcast.
You poor bastards. I hope you had fun.
You poor bastards. You've made it this long. We give you everything and more.
Please.
We have both come to the same conclusion. Not conclusion, but our finalizing topic.
Final thoughts.
Final thoughts on the video we just watched, which came from Vice, which clearly defined a bunch of people who went out to what looks like the Cliffs of Moher, but maybe it's not. We don't know.
I believe the early part of the clip I did have you cut out just because it's a little bit wordy, but that it is not exactly the Cliffs of Moher. It is Moher, so it's multiple hills in the UK. But they believe that is where Jesus initially landed and descended down from. So that's where he landed in the UK, and then he traveled to the Middle East from there, I believe is what they say. That's why they go there to speak to the aliens, because it's the initial landing spot of Jesus, so it's like some kind of holy site.
Yeah, that's something I've never heard before. That's pretty. That's a pretty wild theory.
And they have their spiritual battery that they carry up the hill with them, and then they put it up there, and the folks are touching it, and they're using their energy to speak to the alien.
That's what that device was. That was some sort of spiritual battery.
Yeah, it's a spiritual battery.
Yeah, this
that's
is
also
more
transmitted.
Yeah, this is more cult-like than anything I've ever seen.
Yes.
So the US-based version of this is facilitated, organized, and developed by Dr. Stephen Greer.
Okay. I recognize the name. I'm not very familiar with this work.
Dr. Stephen Greer is a medical doctor who, in the 70s, moved towards CE5 events, which we discussed earlier. Human-initiated alien contact.
Yes.
And he started developing a specific protocol to have that contact. Basically, these are it's a...
Seeking it out. He was
What?
seeking out that contact.
Yeah, but in a very methodical way, basically how to do this. And
Gotcha.
The difference between Stephen Greer's version of this and what we just saw is that
The Aetherius Society.
What?
Oh, they're the Aetherius Society, and
Aetherius
George
Society,
Clooney is the one who started that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Is that they're both spiritually involved, but the other one involves something similar to like what Mecca would do in the middle of is that Turkey, Mecca?
I believe it's in Libya or Tripoli. No. Mecca is in Saudi Arabia. I'm sorry.
Middle East. Let's say Middle East, because
I
I thought it was Turkey, but I really don't know. So you're involving a.
We should look that up.
You're involving some sort of a tangible object that's going to be like a crucifix or a church or whatever it is to
Some sort of totem.
To act as a conduit.
A totem, like some kind of symbol that has meaning to it.
Yep, exactly. Whereas like the CE5 stuff that was developed by Dr. Stephen Greer in the 70s, which is compounded on Dr. J. Allen Hynek's stuff from Project Blue Book, who's the one who's developed the Close Encounters stuff of C1, C2, C3.
Yeah, he developed the that categorization of the encounters.
Yeah, he just took it from there and enabled it for everybody. So you don't have to. It costs nothing. You don't have to go say, oh, here's like Mecca is a big black rock probably about this big that people travel thousands of miles, if not their backyard, to go near because this was given to the Islamic culture, like 1,000, 2,000 years ago. Was it Allah? It was a meteorite. I believe it's a black stone.
It's in Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia, yeah, and they walk circles around. I mean, it's pretty wild. So that's kind of what I'm looking at here with what you just showed me. But like the new the version in the US that's like that is, and I've done it. And have I had any results? I don't know.
Done it.
But they can. I have, yeah, and you can do it too. They have, and you might think I'm a psycho, but like they have.
We know you're a psycho. You're my friend.
We know that, yeah, but they have different categories of this, and like I've always felt very spiritual as a kid. I mean, I was the kid who was like 5, 6, 7 years old who would like in my bedroom sit around it and like try to hope someone would come there and have some spiritual things. So like I'm someone who gets like a lot of chills in my spine when I know or feel something. Maybe I've been very close to death my entire life, and like in a positive way, not a negative way. I don't, and I've been around psychics a lot, especially living in where I live and that type of thing. And like, I have some sort of intuition and things. I don't have like the mark of my palm, like
Massachusetts.
I don't have like the mark of my palm that a lot of people do. So I know I'm not a mind reader or a fortune teller or anything like that. It's not happening. But like overall, I have built up mechanisms over time to be able to deal with like stuff. There's a lot of energy in Salem, 100%. It's absolutely here. It can be not necessarily as negative, but it's a conduit for that type of thing. So anyways, long story short, and I believe that. I firmly do. I really, really do. As far as like alien contact goes and stuff like that, and Jesus being an alien and putting some sort of closure on this topic, is that the Jesus that may or may not have been real 2,000 years ago ish. I got nothing to say about that. I really don't know. There's some tangible evidence that this happened. It's also pretty crazy that some poor guy all of a sudden was like not a political figure, nothing that became like this revolutionary example of how to live life, because again, human nature hasn't changed really ever. It just doesn't change. It's in our DNA to be everything we are, and then all of a sudden,
but human nature hasn't changed throughout it. It's just how we deal with that nature. That's
exactly. So you got all of a sudden you got a celebrity out of nothing, which happens, but like to change ideology so drastically from things may have been necessary to the development of our culture, because there wasn't, who knows how much progress was in the making for that time. There was a lot of bad ideas. There was a lot of dictatorship. There was a lot of rulers and kings and stuff like that. How much longer could you go like that? I don't know, without this being just like crazy. But overall, back to the spiritualism things of this.
Yeah, and that's a topic, because I can do another 3 hours on the spread of Christianity.
Exactly. So was Jesus put here by God himself as someone who's from another planet, and his father lives in a different dimension? We both know that there's another dimension thing going on here, and I think that might be it. And as far as if you use the CE5 method, which is what it's called, to look at, to try to summon alien, like UFOs type of thing, it's not that they're they might be in the universe, maybe somewhere else, and then all of a sudden they get a connection, because like there's an element to human beings that don't have. It is the consciousness. It is that we have like the free will and the ability to close your eyes and to look at the third eye, which I believe in, and try to summon something and try to see something and connect with something else. It's very much there. It's why, and even in the past 20, 30, 40 years, especially since the 50s and 60s, we've gotten more, you go to spiritualism from, the introduction of, the reintroduction of like marijuana and psychedelics. They get to this next stage of consciousness. You realize there's something more to them being just a housewife and dressed in this and then spend the rest of my life like this. There's something else with that. Connect with something else. And then if you can manifest something with you cannot manifest thoughts. If I say, hey, there's a rat running in the ground right there. You try to be a Jedi and you go, I'm going to kill that rat with my thought. Not happening. No, it's not. Your thoughts aren't that powerful, but your intentions can be very powerful. And if you go to a place of, so yoga hopefully brings you to a complete place of peace, and general understanding of something else. No one really, it's hard to identify that. It can be called a lot of different things, but
Something beyond ourselves.
Beyond ourselves with pure intention. Of peace, not anything else, because our egos get in the way of almost everything that you could ever do. So if you get to that spot, it's very hard to do. There's a lot of deep breathing. There's a lot of things where you activate just more of your consciousness. And if you can communicate with what I believe are peaceful aliens, I have no evidence of this, but if you can connect with peaceful aliens who are trying to better the world, those are the ones who are there trying to make sure that we're going the right direction. There are probably evil ones as well who want the worst for us. If you can get to that state of consciousness where you feel like you're kind of floating and you try to connect with them, you might see a light. You might get a different smell. All of a sudden you smell something. Or I mean, not talking about Yetis because I don't really think that is, but you might see something too. That isn't necessarily a UFO. But they're not. I don't think that any UFO is going to be brought to this world by a box that says, "Oh, if this is here, we're going to keep connecting to this like homing device." It's like no. This is these. I think that aliens want peace because they're far advanced. They realize that war and pollution, that type of stuff, is bad. It's inherently very bad.
Destructive.
And if this person is coming into this with the most blank, open mind and open heart to an experience of peace, you might see something. You need to be surprised. You might. I've tried it a few times in Salem, and I haven't been really super successful, but I feel I'm onto something. And it's very much, the basis is it's just meditation. That's it. Nothing else. And that Dr. Stephen Greer, who's been doing this for 40 years, he gives you like, we didn't even mention this once, but he gives you crop circle tones. So they've recorded certain frequencies that have come after a crop circle. So when a crop circle is made, there's sounds that happen in that area when that happens, and they have those, and you can play those. What?
Just that most every crop circle that's ever happened has been disproven. It's completely
I disagree. No
false.
way.
People have made them. They make them. They step on the crops. They get people caught making it. It's completely out of this world. I'm way more in tune with the idea that there could be some sort of spirituality involved in it, that there may be a dimension we don't understand that aliens are part of, and they're contacting us in that sort of way. That's where I'm lost with all of this every time. If there is a way to communicate with the other dimension and other beings that come from beyond ourselves in the way you're talking about, I think that's closer to what could actually be going on. Something we can't understand, that we couldn't understand being just a regular human. You have to take yourself to a place mentally and within yourself that can connect with them in some degree. And that it clashes directly with actual scientific evidence on the spot. And the ideas of communicating beyond ourselves, talking about spiritual energy, it's completely antithetical to the idea that either the ideas of things like cow mutilations or crop circles, those are such physical things that exist, and so many hoaxes have happened in so many situations where it's disproven or it's unproven, which is, obviously you always latch onto the idea that's up in the air. But I'm so much more inclined to go with what you just talked about right now, because it's so ethereal and so much more deep and different and in not understandable. It's almost incomprehensible for what we are. We're very simple beings. It's very difficult to understand that. But as soon as that comes into contact with, and that happens with crop circles happen, it's like, well, maybe that is true, but the amount of cases that show that that's not the case, it's just so many of them. And I am always on the side of, if you want to talk about things that are beyond ourselves, the idea that Jesus could be this being from another dimension that we don't understand, I can get on board with that forever. And I think a lot of people might not be inclined to understand that, but they don't look within themselves that way and think about the ideas that could be beyond what we understand. But as soon as people take that and they go, and that's why when I have my e-meter and I bring it up to a crop circle, that's why that happens. And it's like, well, no, you gotta pick one lane here. Either we can prove it and it's physically understandable by the science we have now and it's measurable, or it's an immeasurable thing that's beyond ourselves and we are not capable of understanding the true nature of it right now, but maybe we will if we learn more about it. Or you can prove it right now, which I don't believe you can.
No one can prove it right now, but I believe that you're 75% on with the spiritual aspect of things, that this is for somebody to get here. it has to be a transdimensional thing. Like there's no way that they're all of a sudden they're like, we're on a journey and we're the Jetsons and we're going.
Yeah, it seems like that would
get
be
here to go visit and then have a
something.
thing. Maybe some cultures are like that as far as UFOs go, but overall they're probably transdimensional. If you can link into that, they want to communicate as long as you're peaceful. But as far as crop circles go, I disagree with you completely.
Okay.
There are crop circles that are like radioactive, and it looks like they went through a microwave, which is impossible when you have a 2x4 with two ropes attached to it and you're doing this whole thing to it. Another conversation with that, and that's a whole nother thing. The crop circle thing. Yeah, the guys in the 80s are not.
Well, we can do that. We can do that another day. We can do
Another day we'll talk about crop circles.
Roswell crashes, radioactivity, things like that. There's plenty of things we could talk about with that.
Oh yeah, this could go on forever. But overall, was Jesus an alien? He might be part of that consciousness that we are all striving for. That is generally a peaceful thing.
In a way that almost no one ever has, and the way that he's affected the world and the way that he's affected people is much more vast than almost any other person that's existed.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that it came online at the second of his birth, it's just weird.
Jesus' birthday.
Shit, like why would all of a sudden imagine if like in 2020 or in 2021 this person's gonna be born that's gonna change the world. This person's kid, like who gives a solid shit about that? I don't.
I don't either.
And then it turns into this prophet who like lives up to the expectations, and there's a whole gap of like this time. It's all strange. It's all weird.
It's all wacky and weird.
It's all wacky and weird. And the older you get, the more you realize it's just so not black and white like this is the way it is. It's like you get older, and you realize consciousness plays into the whole entire thing.
Yeah, if it was all black and white, it would be boring as hell anyways. This is why we get to talk about things like that for so long, because there's a whole gray area in here we can play with and talk about and speculate and bounce back and forth. I think we got to wrap this thing up now, though, now that we talked about that. Anyone who ever wants to listen to this fun thing we're doing here, this is our first time trying it out. Hopefully we can get more streamlined and better at it. But I had a lot of fun talking to you today.
Yeah.
What a great topic to start out with. Was Jesus an alien? That's hot stuff.
Great topic. We hope someone learned maybe anything, but we don't know. No, we're just having fun here.
What do you think?
Chime in. You let us know. We're just chatting with things. We got a bunch of other topics lined up. Joe, what are some of the topics we're gonna cover over the next couple of weeks?
We had a couple of things that we were thinking about talking about in the future. If people are interested, we have hauntings and witchcraft. A lot had to do with Salem and things like that. I know Dylan knows a lot about that. We're also thinking about the history of domesticated species and extinct species on Earth, different animals and life forms that exist on our planet, as well as more grounded things that have, historically things that happened, like G.B. Cooper, his hijacking of the airplane back in the 70s, or different cults and healthcare, things like that. Just a lot of fun stuff to talk about.
Healthcare. Another thing. We've unofficially identified our podcast as the Dylan and Joe Basement Podcast because we're in quarantine and we can't go sit apart. We can't go.
This is how we can talk to each other.
Things that we're a underground bunker. But we talk to each other, and we got one basement. He's got a basement. We're back and forth in basements. We could also do the history of basements. There's a lot of basement information.
A lot of basement talk. The basement podcast. The basement cast.
Basement cast. Yep. What's up in basements? We're not going to talk about like home stuff. That's so boring. But just there were civilizations. I can share my screen real quick of the Dylan and Joe podcast brochure we got here going on. This
episode
is
1. That's us with an alien.
Episode 1. Jesus was an alien. This is what we got here. I meant to share the PDF, not the publisher doc, but the actual background of this of our actual PDF that has been spread throughout the world is specifically about.
All right. So that was the podcast, people.
It's a podcast. Yeah, I'm getting off topic here. You get
I had fun. Yeah, fun.
They were fun basements. We had fun. Here's this chick. Whoops, where did that go? Sorry, Joe. Hang on one second. I'm gonna get back to the Zoom because once you start sharing the screen, it gets out of whack. Come on, everybody. All right. Well, I got you here. So, stop sharing. That's it. So that's it, guys. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week for more podcasts, more topics, and again, that's it. So thanks, Joe. I'm gonna edit this after this. Drop it down so we can accept that. That's it.